Cassandra Clare couldn't do the sibling forbidden love thing twice, so she sneakily invented something that was just as close. Oh hey, it's been a minute. Oh my god, I can't believe we're here. Hi. Welcome to a new plot breakdown in which we are diving into the Dark Artifices series. So I have taken you on the ride of a lifetime, which is the Mortal Instruments series, which is the first series of the Shadowhunters. I'm going to dive right into the Dark Artifices for a few reasons. Number one, this comes directly after the Mortal Instruments. We have already been introduced to a lot of these characters, and the upcoming series, Cassandra Clare's final Shadowhunters series, is coming out in this November, and it follows the siblings of our main character. And number two, I just think that the Infernal Devices is such a fun book to read on your own. I feel like I wouldn't summarize it really well. So I'm diving into this one, which I believe, just giving you a warning, I think this is her at her most unhinged, her yearningest, her steamiest. There are scenes in here in this very book, the first book of the series, that because it is classified as YA, she had to write the scene how she wanted it to be, the R-rated version, and release it on Tumblr. What a time to be alive. Cassie Clare was like shaking the bars of her cage, trying to get out of the YA-ness in here. I have nothing else to say. I'm happy to be here. There are 3 books in this series. They are all over 700 pages long. I have 47 pages of notes simply for this book. When will the next 2 be coming out? Lord only knows. My goal is to have them done before autumn. Keep me in your thoughts, okay? Let me grab my iPad and let's dive in to the Dark Artifices series. Welcome to Lady Midnight. The setting, Los Angeles, 2012. Somewhere on the radio, Call Me Maybe is playing. This is crazy. I just want you to have that in your mind. Call Me Maybe is somewhere on the radio at all times during this book. Okay? We begin with a prologue. Shadow Market nights are Kit's favorite. Kit is a 15-year-old boy living in LA, pretty normal, except for the fact that he has what his father calls the gift. Kit just calls it the sight, because he can see things that other people can't. A pixie, a random vampire here and there, maybe an odd werewolf or two, right? And now that he's 15, he understands what's going on, but when he was really little, it freaked him out. To be fair, right? If you see like a herd or a pack of werewolves running by, a little kid is gonna scream, and that freaked out the kids at his school who weren't seeing what he was seeing. And so his dad basically withdrew him from normal life, and he just kind of lives at home. He has taught himself everything he knows from books. He loves reading, but he doesn't get out much. So the Shadow Market is really the only time he's allowed to like get out of the house and socialize. And the Shadow Market is a market that only exists on certain nights when the weather is just right, and it disappears when the sun comes up. Only a few blocks away, there are Apple stores selling gadgets and laptops. There are cheesecake factories, American apparel shops, and trendy boutiques. But here, there are banshees and fortune tellers, witches and djinn. This is such a time capsule, okay? 2012, American apparel, cheesecake factories. He's essentially at the mall, but he's in the shadowy part of the mall. Okay. He is here helping his dad. His dad has a booth. His dad's name is Johnny Rook. Johnny Rook, while he does sell potions and some charms and sometimes some illegal substances, mainly what his booth is for is information, because Johnny Rook knows everybody. He has a secret on everyone. If you need information for a price, Johnny Rook will get it for you. Okay. So Johnny's reputation kind of keeps Kit safe. So he's allowed to run around the market as he wants to. Today, randomly, a cult member stops him and is like, join our cult. But other than that, it's fine. He runs to another booth where his friend Ren works, this older woman who makes protection charms. And when Kit asks her how she is, she's like, I am actually doing fantastic. Business is booming because of all of those murders. And Kit is like, murders? Ren is like, yeah, you haven't heard? There's like a ton of mundanes showing up with like demon language written all over them, and they've like been burned and drowned and their hands are cut off. And she's like listing these horrific things, and Kit, this little 15-year-old, is like, yeah. Ren is like, how have you not heard about this? But before Kit can answer, they're interrupted by 2 people entering the market. Something you need to know about the site is that Kit was born with it, but technically, if you know the right people, if you pay the right price, a mundane, a person without magic, can buy their way into having the site, and that's super illegal. But nobody's really gonna like, whatever, right? Unless you get caught by the shadowhunters. And remember, in this world of shadowhunters, nobody really likes the shadowhunters, okay? They're kind of assholes. You'll find, even shadowhunters don't like shadowhunters. They're the police. And they're not even really good at being police, as we will soon see. So anyway, 2 shadowhunters walk into the market. Vibes are off. Everybody starts packing up their shit. People are not happy to see these teenagers enter the market. Kit doesn't recognize them. He just recognizes, like, vaguely they're dressed in leather. One is a tall, lanky, redheaded boy, and he can't really see the girl, but she's got like this gorgeous blonde head of hair. And they're heading towards his dad's booth. So he, of course, goes to snoop. He's kind of sneaking around because his dad especially has been like, stay the fuck away from shadowhunters, because this is taking place, remember, right after the Mortal Instruments. And what happened in the last 3 books of the Mortal Instrument is there was a massive war that killed off more than half of the shadowhunters, and they're kind of scrambling to like get their population up. And there are rumors that the shadowhunters are kidnapping anyone under the age of 19 who has the sight. Basically, that qualifies them as being a shadow hunter. They can teach them to fight. You just got to be able to see the demons. And so Kit, noted 15-year-old with the sight, his dad is like, stay the fuck away from these guys, okay? But Johnny seems to know the shadow hunters, or at least the girl, because he's like, hey, Emma, finally, am I meeting your parabatai? And remember, a parabatai is a partner that you have like sworn allegiance to in this ritual. Closer than siblings, closer than lovers. You like share pain, you share feelings, etc. Emma is like, yeah, no. She's kind of looking at this guy like, nah, not mine. She's like, my parabatai, Julian. Yeah, Shadow Market, not really his scene. All right, he's at home, probably making pancakes. This is Cameron. And Cameron's really smarmy. He's like, yeah, and puts his arm around Emma. He's like, I'm Emma's boyfriend. Quote, Cameron might be her boyfriend now, Kit thought, but he wouldn't lay bets on him staying that way. Ooh, burned by a 15-year-old. But anyway, Emma's like, I'm not here to talk about boys. Have you got my information for me? And Johnny hands her a piece of fabric. And he's basically like, there wasn't anything on this. Like, there wasn't any magic, couldn't trace anything. It's a piece of cotton, babe. I'm really sorry. And what this was a piece of Emma's mother's shirt. And Emma's parents were murdered during the Mortal War. And something about their murder just has never sat right with her. Obviously, there were a ton of deaths in the war, but the way that theirs was kind of written off as like, oh, just another one of Sebastian's fun little murders. Emma's like, And she's been investigating this for years. The look of disappointment that passed over Emma's face was vivid. And Kit couldn't help feeling a jolt of sympathy, which surprised him. He never thought he'd be sympathetic to a shadow hunter. And that's when Emma notices him, and she's immediately like, ooh, hi, you're 15, you've got the sight. What are you doing? What are you up to? And Kit is like, Before she could follow that line of thought, Johnny jumps in and is like, by the way, shadow hunters, what are you doing about all of these murders? Because remember, police, right? Why is there like a serial killer on the loose? What are the shadow hunters doing about it? And this is when we learn about the cold peace. Basically, all right, let's go back. During the Mortal Instruments, during the war, the fairies, the fae, helped Sebastian. They were on the wrong side, okay? And so once the war ended, they created this treaty that basically no one is allowed to mingle, to help, to associate with the fae in any way, shape, or form. So all of these murders have been either mundanes, non-magic folk, which the shadow hunters don't deal with, or they have been fae, which now the shadow hunters also don't deal with. So they're sort of like, not our jurisdiction, not our deal. And that's when Johnny's like, yeah, but Emma, what about the writing all over their bodies? And Emma's head snaps up. She's like, what did you just say? Because her parents, when their bodies were recovered, they were covered in demonic writing. She was like, why didn't you lead with that? But obviously I want to know more. And Johnny, because he knows everything about everything, he's like, listen, I can't guarantee it, but I have heard whispers of where the next body is going to be dumped, because this is clearly a serial killer. We know that there's going to be more dead bodies. Okay. He's like, yeah, I've heard whispers. I know some things, but you know, information ain't free. So Emma forks over $200 and gets the location of where the next body dump is going to be. And she hopes that that will bring her one step closer to finding out what happened to her parents. So she leaves. Her and Cameron are like, all right, thank you for your information. Bye. Emma gives Kit a big wink, which Kit just loses his mind about, by the way. Emma's gorgeous. Let's just get that out of the way. Emma's stunning, but Kit knows he's probably never going to see her again because he is destined to a life of crime. He is very aware that his dad does illegal shit and he will likely just inherit the business, and he's also going to live a life of crime and secret information. For someone as tough as his dad, he seems a little rattled by Emma being there, and he seems like really mad that Emma noticed Kit and like specifically gave him attention. And Kit asks him why, and Johnny's just like, don't talk about it, kid. Move on. And so Kit says, for someone who sells secrets, you sure keep a lot of them yourself. To which Johnny Rook says, his arm around Kit, a rare affectionate gesture, my biggest secret is you. Chapter 1. We're with Emma. Emma is on the roof looking over a party. There's like jacaranda trees, fairy lights, probably LMFAO playing on the speakers. It's a Los Angeles party in 2012. She's here because this is where Johnny's information sent her. Emma's not alone. She's with Christina. We love Christina. I just need to say the reason that she is played by Amy from Brooklyn Nine-Nine on the wall is because their dynamic, just please, you need to picture Amy and Rosa. Goody two-shoes, follows the rules, probably has a binder. Chaos, probably has a gun.
Key to good teamwork is an equal exchange of ideas.
Stop. I know you already have a plan. And I want to win. So for the next 8 hours, I'm down with all your nerdy crap. Come on, Amy. Show me the binder.
Okay? That's them. We love Christina. Christina has recently moved here from Mexico City, where her mother is in charge of the institute down there. She's a girl with secrets. We know that something bad happened in Mexico City that had her coming over to live in Los Angeles. It might revolve around a boy. Also, her father was killed in the war and her mom took over the institute. So like just weird, sad family stuff. We're going to uncover some more, but I love Christina. We love her. Okay. And she is currently coaching Emma through a breakup. Emma is on the phone with Cameron being like, it's not you, it's me. I'm so sorry, blah, blah, blah. She's basically not doing it well. And Christina is like, be firm, but be gentle, be kind, but be, it doesn't go well. Cameron hangs up and Emma is just like, okay, and snaps into shadowhunter mode. Now, why is she with Christina and not her parabatai Julian? Because Julian is away in England with the whole damn family. So he is Julian Blackthorne, and the Blackthorne family, I'll introduce you to them in a second, but there's a ton of them. Their relatives still live in England. They have decided to summer in the British countryside. But he will be coming back the day after tomorrow, and Christina is sort of like, damn, you have said so many nice things about Julian. You have hyped him up so much. I'm worried I'm gonna fall in love with this guy. I came here to escape boys, but apparently there is a perfect boy right here. So yeah, we wait with bated breath for Julian, but Emma's got a dead body to find. She's like, stop, enough boy talk. Let's talk murder. And again, she's really invested in this because she believes that this will be a very important clue to finding out what happened to her parents, right? So when she sees a man clearly with a glamour on him, which means he's likely a fae, usually they're the ones who glamour themselves, Emma jumps into action, literally. She jumps off of the roof. I think that Clare actually did a really good job of like giving them their backstory in the Mortal Instruments. Back when they were in the Mortal Instruments, these guys were 12. Now they're 17, 18. Emma was already like this as a 12-year-old. Okay. She was reckless. She would like have a dagger to the neck of anyone who said anything bad about Julian. Okay. She's what people might call a firecracker. All right. So this is who she is, flying off of roofs. Christina is just like, okay. So she lands right in front of this dude, and the fae aren't supposed to be walking around. This is a mundane party. They're not supposed to be mingling with the mundane. So technically, as a shadow hunter, she is legally allowed to stop him. But in order to stall him, like to talk to him longer, she's like, I need you to empty your pockets. I think that you stole from the mundanes. And the fae is like being really annoying about it. To be fair, so is Emma. He's taking his sweet ass time, and Emma's like, listen, my boyfriend and I just broke up. I am not in the mood. All right, you don't want to mess with me. And the Fae is like, oh, you're single? Wow, I would have never guessed. And Emma's like, yeah, well, the Carstairs and the Ashdowns never got along anyway. She is Emma Carstairs, and her boyfriend is Cameron Ashdown. She's like, yeah, the families, you know, Carstairs, love never came easy to us. And the Fae freezes. He's like, oh, you're a Carstairs, aren't you? He's like, you live in the Institute with that Blackthorn family, don't you? You'd think you'd be a little bit nicer to me. Or have you forgotten Mark so quickly? Mark, our Mark, okay? Our boy has grown up, or so we think, because we haven't seen him in 5 years. Mark is the eldest brother of the Blackthorn family, but he is half Fae, half Shadowhunter, half Fae. And so when the war ended, he was taken by the Wild Hunt, and he has had to like basically serve a prison sentence there, and they have not been able to contact him. We have not seen Mark in a long time, but we know that he is being held captive in Fairy. Okay, so the Fae is sort of like, yeah, why don't you be a little bit nicer? Okay? And before Emma can respond, the Fae just bolts. He just turns around and runs down the alleyway. He gets away, but what do they find in the alleyway? But a gray, mutilated body with the exact same marks on it as Emma's parents. Once Emma gets over this shock, she immediately calls the Silent Brothers because they deal with dead bodies and demon stuff. And while they arrive, they are followed in by a truck, and out pops the coolest girl you've ever seen. I want you to know this, okay? Meet Diana. Diana is basically like the tutor for the Blackthorn family and the Carstairs. She works at the Institute. She trains them. She teaches them. She is like the mom, big sister, mentor, and she's so cool. Editing Carrie here. Hi. So I was 90% done with editing this video when someone let me know that Diana is in the fandom canonically represented as a Black woman. Her skin color is mentioned once in the 700-page book. It just says dark skin, and I honestly missed it. And so her fan cast will be represented differently moving forward. Apologies, I just didn't look up the fan art for Diana. Wanted to note that. Anyway, she's still hot. She's got koi fish tattoos all over the place. She rolls up in a pickup truck. She's in this like hot ass dress. And apparently she looks exactly like the goddess of the hunt that she's named after.
Why have we been spending all of this time talking to the men when this being has been floating through the halls of the building? I have so much respect for you that it has circled around into objectification.
She immediately, first things first, hugs Emma. She fully understands. Like, the thing you need to know about Diana is that Diana understands what every single person is going through. Even if she doesn't like agree with how they're reacting to it, she like emotionally gets what all of these teenagers are suffering with. So she is like, Emma is reliving the trauma of her dead parents. She needs a hug. And Diana was in Alicante during the Dark War. And one of the things that she did is she was in charge of like guarding the children. Like, they took all of the young Shadowhunters, put them in a safe place. And Diana basically put her body and her sword in between an entire army and stopped every single one of them from getting those kids. She saved dozens of children, Emma being one of them. And Emma had loved her ever since. And after they hug, Diana is like, girl, you know you're gonna burn a hole through Brother Enoch looking at him like that, right? Apparently Emma wants answers, and so she's just like staring at the Silent Brother like, and Diana's like, okay, let's calm down, let's take a breath. You're freaking them out. That's their job. And Diana has always said that she believes Emma's theory. She's like, yeah, I don't believe that Sebastian killed your parents. Behind you 100%. Girl, okay? But at the same time, Diana is like, I don't want you to get your hopes up. Maybe someone just likes writing demonic stuff on bodies. Let's just let the investigation run its course. Let the brothers do their thing. She says, I'll give you any information I can. And then she goes to assist the Silent Brothers. And then Christina chimes in. She's been here the whole time. And this is when I must remind you that she is Amy, okay? She is prepared. She is level-headed. She gets the job done. While Emma was freaking out, Christina was snapping pics. Christina's like, I've got pictures of the bodies. We can do our own little investigation. And that is when Emma is like, girl, I think it's time to introduce you to my wall of crazy. As I stand before you in front of my wall of crazy, Emma opens her closet. They're back at the Institute, back in Emma's bedroom. She opens up her closet and she basically has every bit of information about her parents' murder taped up on the wall. There are some official documents that she stole when she was 12. She's got photos, she's got maps, she's got everything, okay? And Christina really feels for her. She's not like, okay, this isn't a wall of crazy. This is a wall of dedication, let's say. And she says something that's a little important, and this is just like a piece of Christina's character, right? She's as religious as a shadowhunter can be. She says, "You know that I think the angel has a plan for all of us, and whatever I can do to help you, I will." And Christina has been very open about her faith. Basically, some shadowhunters believe that like the angel that created the shadowhunters is kind of like their god. And Emma says, in many ways, she envied Christina her faith. Sometimes she thought the only thing she had faith in was revenge and Julian. And so Christina has survived the wall of crazy. She wasn't scared off. Now it is time to introduce her to the Blackthorns before everybody arrives. Remember, they're supposed to come the day after tomorrow. She's like, girl, we got a lot of people to cover. Let's start learning names and personalities, okay? We need to warn you about a couple of them. Emma decides to introduce the family via their bedrooms. So we're going to go on a little house tour. Emma lives on the other side of the Institute from the Blackthorns. She like intentionally wanted some space, I think. So we head over there, and first things first, we're going to meet Octavian. Where are you? Octavian, aka Tavi. Tavi is only 7. He's the baby. Julian often has to sleep with him because he has pretty constant nightmares. He's a 7-year-old boy. There's not really much to say. Up next, we have Drusilla, aka Drew. Drew is 13. She's a girl after my own heart. She's obsessed with horror movies. Her entire bedroom is just posters of scary shit. And she's a little goth chick. And we love that for her. Down the hall, we have Livy and Ty, Livia and Tiberius. Great names. Let me just say that Ty, Livy, and Drew are going to be some of the main characters in the next book. So if you really want to pay attention, I will try to include as much as I can about these guys. But Livy and Ty are twins. They are 15. They could not be more different. Livy is, I would say, most similar to Emma. She's very much a firecracker. She loves being a shadow hunter. She wants to be in the center of all of the action, always. Ty is much more reserved. He's quiet. If Livy wants to run at everything with a knife, Ty wants to stand in the background and collect all of the clues first. He's obsessed with Sherlock Holmes. Livy also, fun fact, really likes software. She's like low-key a programmer in the making, and so does her brother Ty. This is where they have a shared interest, is computers. But Ty hates math. So Ty does everything else. Livy does anything that involves math, and together they're little whiz kids, okay? And Ty is always outside and he always loves animals. We love that for him. Okay. Livy, meanwhile, likes costume jewelry and swords. Emma is like, yeah, I really hope that Ty had fun in England. I think that in the countryside, he'd find a lot of like frogs and toads in the hole. And Christina's like, toad in a hole is a food. And Emma's like, no, impossible. And then we get to the next room. It's painted blue in such a way that it's the same color as the sky, so it looks like you're floating. And on top of the blue are murals. And Christina immediately recognizes one, being from Sleeping Beauty. She says, I don't remember the story being so sad, or the prince being so defeated. She glances at Emma. He's a sorrowful boy, Julian? And Emma's like, no, he's not. He's not depressed. And Christina says, well, that's not the same thing as being sad, is it? And remember, they have lost their parents in a pretty horrific way. Like Emma has as well, and to be fair, so has Christina. If we remember how Julian's father died, Julian had to kill him. Sebastian basically took over his brain. He was no longer his father, basically. But Julian had to kill the body that used to be his dad. So I would agree with Christina that Julian is a sad boy. We also have a quick mention of Arthur. Arthur is the uncle. He is Julian's dad's twin brother. He lives in the attic. We'll hear more about him eventually, but just know there's an old man in the attic. He's technically running the Los Angeles Institute as the adult, but we soon learned that Julian, at his age of 17, turning 18, is running the shots. Okay, Okay, so he's a sad but busy boy. And then of course we have Mark. Mark still has his room all set up at the Institute. Mark is the eldest brother. He is away in Fairy. And Mark had always been gentle. Emma wondered whether he still was anymore, because the wild hunt, any time spent in Fairy, messes with your mind, but specifically the wild hunt is like fairies at their craziest. Like they become obsessed and insane. And he's been there for many years. And this is when Christina lets us know that Mark is actually one of the reasons she came to the Institute, because it's pretty normal for like teenagers, especially like 18, 19-year-olds, to go to a different institute, kind of like study abroad. So why did she choose LA? Mark. She hopes that one day she can be a part of brokering a better treaty than the cold peace. She thinks that it's really unfair and that there has to be a better way than just shunning an entire group of people. But that's enough for today. They're like, we worked hard, found a dead body, scared off a fae, broke up with my boyfriend. It's time for ice cream and bad movies. Now, in case jumping off of roofs and having a closet that she deems the wall of crazy, in case that didn't clue you in, Emma's intense. She runs 5 miles every day. She has spent her entire life trying to become the best shadow hunter in the world. She is also a super fangirl for none other than Jace Herondale. During the war, Jace gave her one of his steles, which is what they use to like write the runes that they use, right? Normally, shadow hunters use steles like pencils. They'll use one up, they'll throw it out, they'll lend it to people, whatever. No, this is a holy object to Emma, because not only is he hot, but Jace Herondale is, in her humble opinion, the best shadow hunter there ever is. So Emma wants to be him. So what does she do? She runs 5 miles a day. She practices falling from very high places. She walks on broken glass to practice, just in case she needs to walk on broken glass in the future, okay? This girl is covered in scars, but the main one of note, is the one on her forearm, and it came from the Cortana. This is a sword that you are going to hear about in every single series. It is a legendary sword passed down through the Carstairs family, and the day that her parents died, she grabbed it, and she was basically like cradling it in her arms in such a way that you do not hold a sword, and so she cut herself very badly, and has had a scar ever since. But now the Cortana, ranked potentially equally with the stele from Jace Herondale in terms of important objects in her life. Girlie's intense, Girlie's covered in scars, but she's very much like a fuck you, I don't care what other people think kind of girl, so she doesn't care about her scars, and besides, Julian doesn't seem to care. And speaking of Julian, Emma is so excited for him to be home, because she's dealing with a lot, right? She's always dealing with a lot, but like she's dealing with a lot right now with the discovery of these bodies. She's got so many emotions that she can't even put a name to. And she just knows, like, not only because he's her Parabatai, but because Julian is Julian and he's always understood her. And she's like, at least I can have someone who gets me. Like, Christina's amazing, but like Julian understands me at a soul level. So I cannot wait for my best friend to come home. But thoughts of Julian are interrupted because Diana arrives at the Institute and Emma is in trouble because Johnny Rook squealed. Basically, Emma is not supposed to be making deals with criminals and getting information about dead bodies and things like that. Generally not supposed to be at the shadow market, I would say. Diana is like, listen, the way that I'm hearing the story, it sure sounds like you're abusing your status as a shadow hunter to like get what you want. Like Johnny Rook wouldn't do these deals with a normal ass 17-year-old, okay? And she says, there's more to being a shadow hunter than just knowing 65 ways to kill a man with salad tongs. And Emma is immediately like, well, I know 67 ways. And Diana is like, and apparently Emma is in extra trouble because she kind of tread on somebody's toes. Basically, the Clave already knew, the like upper government of the Shadowhunters, right? They already were aware of these murders and they were already tracking them. And so Emma showing up kind of derailed their investigation, allegedly. And they were treading very carefully because not only does this involve Fae, which they're not supposed to be dealing with because of the Cold Peace Treaty, but it also involves the Scolomonts. And that means it's way out of Shadowhunter Shadowhunter jurisdiction, or itty bitty baby Shadowhunter jurisdiction. What is the Scholomance, you ask? Fantastic question. This does come up later. The Scholomance is a place where the most elite Shadowhunters were trained. It is a castle carved into the side of a mountain in the Carpathians, and the people who graduate from this school are called centurions. They are scholars and legendary warriors, and they are going to deal with this serial killer, not Emma Carstairs. And that body that she found is number 12 in terms of how many mundanes / fae have died. Emma is ready to fight Diana on this. She's basically like, well, I have a right to find out about my parents and fuck the clave, okay? When Diana reminds her of something that slipped Emma's mind. So we have Mark. Mark is the eldest half-brother. He's half fae. He got sent off into fairy, right? But we also have the eldest sister of the Blackthorns named Helen. Helen is Mark's full sister. Everybody else is half sister. She is also half fae. And even though she did absolutely nothing wrong, at the end of the war, the clave sort of banished her to work at this like super remote institute, like way up in the Arctic Circle, just to like keep her away from important things because of her fae heritage. And they aren't calling it banishment, right? They just reassigned her, and she just happened to be really far away from everybody and she can't come back home. Okay. Every year since this has happened, Julian has petitioned. He has written letters trying to get Helen back. It feels like after 5 years, the clave would kind of run out of reasons to deny his request to like, hey, can my sister come home? But Diana is like, let's put our thinking caps on. If Emma were to really push her way into this investigation that involves the Fae, that would make it look like the Blackthorn family is still wanting to like be involved with the fair folk. Basically, it would make it harder for them to get Helen back. So for Julian's sake, Diana is like, Emma, please stay out of this. And at first Emma is like, but Julian would want me to do this. Julian wants me to find out about my parents. And Diana is like, girl, Julian would cut off his own hand if he thought it would help you. It's not about what Julian would do. It's about what you should do for Julian. And speaking of family, knock, 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 who walks into the Institute but the whole Blackthorn gang? They're a day early. It takes Emma about a millisecond to jump into Julian's arms, and Julian from the jump is acting weird, okay? He gives her such a bear hug, squeezes her so tight she can't breathe, and then immediately like shoves her away and takes a step back. And Emma, while she's recovering from the whiplash, is like, does he kind of look different? This is the longest they've ever been apart, pretty much in their entire lives. He seems to be like just a little squirrely. He's doing a head count. He's got a lot of siblings to take care of. Okay, so he's just sort of all over the place, but something else seems off. Emma can't help but notice just physically how different he looks. He's tanner, which is weird because he was in England versus being in Los Angeles. But anyway, his hair is longer, generally looks older. Emma decides like, we'll talk about this later. Let me go say hi to all of my other kids. She greets the youngins, and then Julian comes over and starts writing on her arm. This is a thing that they've always done. They like write on each other. And he says, "Are you all right?" She turns to look at him and is like taken aback by his luscious, long, wavy hair. She uses the term luscious. Okay, so guys. And then she's like, girl, snap out of it. She's like, yeah, okay, so he's got biceps that I don't remember seeing, but he's also got paint under his fingernails and dark circles under his eyes. And he looks exactly like my Julian. You're just having a weird reaction because you haven't seen him in a really long time. The kids scatter. Julian is like, listen, I gotta go check up on Arthur, Uncle Arthur, see you tomorrow. And Emma is like, no. When you're done, like, can you come to my room? We've got some stuff I need to talk about. And Julian's like, cool, and starts climbing the stairs to the attic. She puts her hand against her chest, though the pain she had felt while Julian was in England, that stretched rubber band kind of feeling that she hated, it was gone. But now she felt a strange new ache near her heart. What are they feeling? Up in the attic, we finally are introduced to Uncle Arthur. Uncle Arthur and Andrew, Julian's father, are like really obsessed with Greek and Roman classics, talking Antigone, talking the Odyssey. Hence the kids' names. Okay, Julian was supposed to be named something else. I think he has like a really intense middle name, but hence the Octavian, the Tiberius of it all. Okay. And we kind of get that Arthur is maybe not all there anymore, because when Julian walks in, Arthur is immediately like, Andrew, I was just looking for you. I have been musing over all of the uses of love in these classics. And can I talk about it with you? And Julian is just sort of like, not again. Also, all of the windows in the attic are covered in like blackout paper. It's kind of a mess in there. It's bad news. Okay. But Arthur is undeterred. He continues, and it's heavy handed. Okay. But we got to get these definitions out of the way. Cassie needs us to know all of these things. We're going to talk about the Greek definitions of love. Okay, we have agape, which is the highest form of love, the love that gods feel. Next, we have eros, which is romantic love. We have philia, the love of friends, and storge, the love of family. And he's like, so what I'm thinking, Andrew, and Julian's still just like, He's like, what are your thoughts about parabatai love? Is it philia, friends? Is it agape? That highest, truest love? It certainly can't be eros. And Julian is just like, this is literally the last thing I want to be talking about right now. Oh my God. So finally he's like, all right, hey, Arthur, hey, Uncle Arthur, Julian here, not Andrew. The Blackthorn family is back. Okay, your nieces and nephews are safe. And I brought you dinner. And Arthur kind of clears his head and he's like, Julian, you're a good boy, aren't you? Shame it won't help you in the end. And then Arthur turns back to his book, and it is clear the conversation is over. Julian is like, Key. Julian turns to leave, and he kind of stops for a moment on the attic stairs because he's like, oh my God, silence. He just does not have a moment of peace. Okay, this is a teenage boy who has been raising his siblings as if he is their father. He's been running the Los Angeles Institute as if he's an adult because all of his older siblings have been banished. His parents are dead. He hasn't taken a beat in a long time. So he's just standing on the attic stairs like, at least when they went to the cottage in England, he could lay outside and just try and get his minds off things. He specifically says, even though he really didn't want to leave Emma, this was a really important trip for him. He said he felt like an addict, getting away from the source of his addiction. But he fears just a few months away from her didn't have the effect he wanted. So this is where I need to remind you that parabatai, while they have an incredible bond, they are not allowed to fall in love. They can be best friends, they can be siblings, they can be soulmates in every sense of the word, but they cannot fall in romantic love. Let's just say Julian's having some problems with that, okay? Okay. A few hours later, Emma wakes up in her bed. She's having a nightmare. She looks at the clock and it's 3 a.m. and Julian has not come to see her like she asked. So she rolls out of bed and decides to find him herself. She goes into his room and sure enough, he's zonked out. So she shakes him awake and is like, nightmare, may I come in? His eyes are half open, his voice muffled, and he says, of course. He is a sleepy boy. So his breath evens out almost immediately and he's asleep. They're not cuddling. Emma gets in. They're not cuddling. Okay, they've shared a bed many a time growing up and they're very serious about keeping to their side of the bed. They used to be really annoying about it when they were kids. Like they would build a wall and they'd yell at each other if they ever crossed the barrier. They've grown up a little bit. Now they can just stay on their side of the bed, right? But as Emma lays there, she kind of looks over at Julian, who is out like a light. And Emma can't help but think that, quote, one day she and Julian would both be married to other people, and there would be no more crawling into each other's bed, no more exchanging secrets at midnight. Their closeness wouldn't break, but it would bend, and it would stretch into a new shape, and she would just have to learn to live with that. One day, but not quite yet. And when she wakes up, Julian is gone. So Emma also is like obsessed with Julian, but as we've seen from her being like, my heart, what is this feeling? She hasn't put a name to it yet. She just thinks of Julian as her soulmate in not necessarily a romantic way, but his hair, all right? So she's woken up, Julian's gone. Where is he? On the beach. She always heads out there to do her 5-mile run in the sand because she's crazy. So she heads out there and sees her moody little boy staring out into the waves. And this is when they finally are able to talk. Emma catches him up on everything that's been happening. She shows him photos of the body. He's like, God, first thing in the morning, girl. Oh, and this is when she says, listen, I don't want to hurt you or your family or Helen. What should I do? Right? Everything that Diana said. She's like, what do you think I should do? And Julian is like, honestly, girl, I've been asking for 5 years and they have never budged. They've never even answered my letters. I don't think we're getting Helen back. But he says, but if you solve this, if you get to the bottom of these murders, then the Clave might owe us a favor, right? And maybe then we can get Helen back. So he kind of gives her his blessing of like, let's fucking go. Let's Scooby-Doo this shit. We could make sure everyone knows about this. We've got connections. They won't be able to silence us. And who are their connections? None other than Clary and Jace, because Clary and Jace basically adopted these kids. Clary loves Emma. Emma loves Jace. Julian tolerates them both. And now, fast forward 5 years later, Clary and Jace actually run the New York Institute. The Lightwoods, get out of town. Jace and Clary run the place now. And Julian is like, look at how much shit they got away with because they saved the world. Clary and Jace, agents of chaos, now they're the head of the New York Institute and honored as like some of the best shadowhunters in the world. Yeah, if we do something big like them, we can also get away with shit. But enough on planning to save the world. It's pancake day. Julian is like, fuck. And he runs back into the kitchen because the pancakes won't make themselves. While Julian panic runs to the kitchen, Emma goes to wake Christina up because she's going to meet the whole family. Brings her down to the kitchen. It's like sunny, smells like butter. Julian is at the sink washing dishes. He's barefoot. He's got a dish towel like slung over his shoulder. It's got kittens on it, okay? And Christina is like, oh shit, Emma wasn't kidding. Julian is perfect. And a bonus, the kids also seem chill. And for Christina, this was really important because she's honestly really enjoyed it just being her and Emma in the house, and an introduction of what do we got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 new faces. She was sort of like, I don't know about this, boss. They seem cool. Christina's like, okay, we're fine. And while pancake breakfast is super fun, everybody's really jolly, quickly the conversation turns to the murders. And Ty is pissed that he didn't know about this immediately, right? Remember, this is body number 12. Why wasn't he told about these murders? Because remember, our boy is obsessed with Sherlock Holmes, and he really believes that if there is a mystery, he is going to solve it. And Emma is like, okay, listen, I can give you everything I know. You just got to promise not to tell Diana. Like if Diana hears that I'm telling a 7-year-old, a 13-year-old, and a 15-year-old about a murder over pancakes, I'm already in enough trouble as it is, right? So she gives them the lowdown. Livy specifically is really excited to be home so that she can use the Shadowhunter training room, and she also can train with girls her age. She considers Drew to be too young, and Drew is busy watching horror movies, right? So she's like, okay, Christina, Emma, you, me, swords, jumping off of shit, what do you say? And they're like, yeah, okay, we'll meet you later, Livy, don't worry. So overall, Christina is like, okay, successful first meeting, but she can't help but feel a little sad, little melancholy, just because seeing how Emma and Julian interact with each other, they're so close and they're clearly just such good friends. And Christina is like, I had that. You know, she says she had once thought she would have had a parabatai herself, though it was a dream she had long put to bed. And she mentions 2 names. We have Perfect Diego, her first love, and then her best friend, Jamie. Jaime? But Christina keeps her cards pretty close to her chest, so we just get names out of her for now. But the gang has officially assembled. And you know who's going to keep those names in mind? Livy. Livy is a little boy crazy. So she gets to the training room a little bit later, and Emma and Christina were kind of mentioning Diego, and she is like, Diego? Who's this? And Emma has nicknamed Diego Perfect Diego and will only refer to him as Perfect Diego for the rest of this book. So that is what he is named. And Livy is like, Perfect Diego, what makes him so perfect? Tell me more. There's a boy who's I'm not related to. And when Livy is like, so is he really perfect? Christina just says, no. And Emma has noticed that whenever Christina gets upset, she never talks about it. She just gets really quiet. And so Emma immediately is like, okay, let's talk about impaling people. Shadowhunter 101. Tina goes off to the other side of the training ring, I think, to catch the knives that they're going to learn how to be throwing. Whatever. Anyway, basically, Livy and Emma have a private conversation. And Livy basically just leans over and she's like, I like this girl. I like this Tina. okay? And she's like, in fact, you know what? If she doesn't like this Diego guy, why don't we set her up with Julian? Maybe that would lighten him up a little bit. He was kind of a downer when we were in England. And when Tina eventually comes back, she's like, are you guys okay? She kind of pulls Emma aside. She's like, you good, girl? And Emma's like, why? Why do you ask? Because according to Christina, Emma looks like she's seen a ghost. She got really pale. She went weirdly still. And maybe it's because of picturing Christina and Julian together didn't sit so well with her. But if there's ever a girl who doesn't understand her own emotions, it's Emma Carstairs, okay? So, woo. But before Emma can give her feelings a second thought, they're interrupted, of course, by a knock at the door. Who do we get to meet now? None other than Malcolm Fade. Malcolm Fade is a warlock, similar to our boy Magnus. He's just a goofy dude. He is, in fact, the High Warlock of Los Angeles, so he's a pretty important guy. He's really old, and warlocks are pretty much immortal, but you get a little crazy after a few hundred years, so he's just like an old, loopy, kind of crazy dude. But it's harmless. He's like always forgetting things. Today, he has decided to tie his shoelaces together so he keeps tripping, and Emma's just like, what's up, Malcolm? And then uses her sword to slice the shoelaces. She's like, let me help you there. And he's like, wow, brilliant, thank you. Why is Malcolm at the Institute? Julian is the one who actually opened the door. And Malcolm is like, Julian, I brought Arthur's medicines. And Julian looks at Malcolm like, you fucking idiot. You spilled the beans. This is clearly like a, nobody needs to know about my uncle's medicine, Malcolm. What are you talking about? Kind of thing. But if there's one thing to know about Julian, it's that he can come up with lies really quick. Okay? It comes into play the entire book series. This is just our first taste of it. He immediately is like, oh, that's right. Yeah, Arthur's not feeling really well. Thank you so much for picking that up for me. Let's go bring it to him. And even though Emma thinks it's kind of weird, it isn't weird enough to set off any alarm bells. but just keep that in mind. And before they go up to the attic, Malcolm Fade requests that we order pizza, specifically vampire pizza. And Emma's like, what the, like made by vampires? And Malcolm's like, of course, it's the best in the city. And Emma's like, okay, just don't tell me what's in the sauce. Now, even though Malcolm is a little bit crazy, he's also incredibly smart and the High Warlock of Los Angeles. So Emma kind of pulls him aside to show him the pictures of the dead bodies. And Malcolm's first reaction is like, ew, give a guy a warning. But after that, he's like, oh yeah, definitely a demon language. And looking at the pictures, he says, it looks like those are remnants of a ceremonial circle. He's like, somebody drew a protective ring to protect themselves from whatever spell killed this guy. Then he's like, well, hold on. And he kind of zooms in. He's like, no, those aren't protection runes. Those are summoning runes. Someone is trying to summon something into this world. And once a spell of that size is successful, we'll know. Trust me. Didn't work this time. That's when Livy and Ty come down and they're like, hey guys, come up to the computer room. 2012, what a time to be alive. They were like, hey, we found something on the computer. Why don't you guys all come up? And as they're walking up the stairs, Malcolm pulls Julian to the side and he's like, it's gotten worse, hasn't it? And Julian's like, yeah, I mean, not worse, not better. Uncle Arthur's just kind of deteriorating. And Malcolm's like, no, not that. You and Emma. Does she know about you? Julian felt his heart wrench inside his chest. Stop, he said. Malcolm's like, wait, I mean, I just like happy endings. Julian spoke through his teeth. This is not a love story. Oh, Julian. Every story is a love story. Julian storms off and Malcolm calls from the foot of the stairs. Laws are meaningless, child. There's nothing more important than love, and there's no law higher. Because again, the law says no love between Parvati, and it seems like Malcolm has picked up what Julian's putting down faster than Emma. What have our mini masterminds Livy and Ty found out? So they were combing through all the evidence about the previous deaths, and basically the only thing that they share in common is the geographical location of each death. They have Emma's parents' deaths, and then a 4-year gap, and then all of a sudden, one death per month has occurred. They don't have the same kind of jobs, they aren't from the same place, they aren't Only thing similar is that their bodies are placed according to ley lines in the city. And ley lines, of course, are like streams of magic, like where magic is stronger, for example. That's bizarre. Good thing we have Malcolm here to shed some light on that. But they are interrupted by another knock on the door. And who is it? But a vampire pizza delivery man. Emma's like, holy shit, you guys really are vampires. And he's like, yeah, and we accept tips. And he's like this really kind of glum looking teenager. He's like, yeah, why is that weird to you? And Emma's like, well, you're a vampire. I thought you'd have something better to do. The vampire sighs and he's like, girl, do you know how hard it is to get a job when your ID says that you're 150 years old and you can only go out at night? She hands him his tip and then he just storms off. But I must note that he is wearing a band t-shirt for a band called The Mortal Instruments, which is Simon's band back in Brooklyn. So just cute. He's got vampire fans. So we got the pizza. Let's go back to the murders. And this is when we get a taste of the true Julian Blackthorne, because they grab the pizza. Malcolm requests that they watch Notting Hill, of all movies. And if you consider Jace Herondale to be our emo king, Julian Blackthorne is his protege. Might I say worse? Might I say worse? So they settle down eating pizza. Everyone is enraptured in the love story that is Notting Hill, when all of a sudden Julian just decides, I need to kill this vibe right now. He says, this movie isn't real. He says, and I quote, when you love someone, they become a part of you. They're in everything you do. They're in the air that you breathe, the water you drink, the blood in your veins. Their touch stays on your skin and their voice stays in your ears. Their thoughts stay in your mind. You know their dreams because their nightmares pierce your heart, and their good dreams are your dreams too. And you don't think they're perfect. You know their flaws and that deep down truth of them, their shadows, their secrets, and they don't frighten you away. In fact, you love them more for it because you don't want them perfect. You want them, and then he stops. And he realizes the whole room is dead silent. Everyone is like mid pizza bite looking at him like,
I know, but he's so cute.
and Jules is like, time to wrap it up. And he starts cleaning up the pizza. He's like, I don't buy this Hugh Grant, Julia Roberts bullshit. He's a rom-com hater and I love him for that. And if you thought he was done being emo for the day, you thought wrong, because after they have their pizza, they do a little chat about what's going on. Emma finds him at the beach again. And she's like, Julian, can you tell me what is off? Like, we're Parbatai. I literally feel what you feel. What's going on? And he just kind of unloads about how, ever since Mark is gone, he's had to take on all these responsibilities and he just doesn't think he's doing it well. He's like, I've got two 15-year-olds, a 13-year-old, a 7-year-old. They're all counting on me and I think I'm fucking it up. I can make a mean pancake, but am I their father? He says he doesn't believe he's made all the right choices or that his life even went the way he wants it to. And then he says, I don't even know if I'd wanted a Parbatai, which made Emma flinch, because again, the whole reason they became Parbatai so young is that they were going to separate them. Emma, because she was orphaned, she was going to go off to stay with some faraway family member and wasn't going to be with Julian anymore. And they were like, we're becoming Parbatai so that you can't separate us or we'll die. So he's sort of like, if life had gone differently, I don't know if I would have made that choice. I don't know if I would have wanted a Parbatai. And Emma flinches. That's when Julian gets to his feet and he's like, I shouldn't want this. I shouldn't have done this. And he runs into the house. The next day brings some unexpected guests. We are with Diana, who is conducting school, basically, a tutor session with all of the kids. And Christina is like, guys, she's looking out the window. She's like, yeah, there's a group of people coming up to the house and bad vibes. And by bad vibes, I mean, they look like fairies, which is interesting because Diana in class was just talking about the cold peace. So we are once again reminded that we're not supposed to be communicating with the fae in any way, shape, or form. So why is there a group of fairies showing up at Arthur Blackthorne's front door? Julian immediately runs up to the attic to give Arthur his medicine. This is when we learn that the potion that Malcolm delivered basically brings Arthur back to his normal self for a few hours. Apparently, like the kickback, the side effects, once it kind of runs through your system is really bad. So Julian doesn't give it to him often. But in this case, Arthur's the alleged head of the institute. He needs to show up. Julian can't open the door and answer to a bunch of fairies, right? And once Arthur comes back to himself and Julian tells him what's happening, Arthur's like, oh, they're finally here. Because apparently they've been sending Arthur messages for a while via fairy message. So usually like scribbled on a leaf or something. And Julian's just never noticed because why the fuck would he notice a leaf? Okay. So Arthur is like, okay, I can handle this. I can handle this. Let's go down and talk to them. And obviously they're not going to just turn them away because they might hurt Mark. The Blackthorns, for better or for worse, are always willing to break that one particular rule and talk to Faye, just in case they ever hear anything about Mark. So Arthur goes out the front door. Emma is trying to eavesdrop because of course she is, when she leans a little closer and she recognizes one of these Faye motherfuckers. And it's the guy who made fun of her for her attitude. The one who was like, wow, you're single? With that attitude? Yeah, it's the guy from the night that they discovered the dead body. He introduces himself as Irla, I believe it's pronounced, and he's with a buddy named Kiernan. And when Kiernan takes off his hood, Emma literally gasps. This boy is hot. Okay, like fairies are always attractive. All right, let's just keep that in mind. Hot they may be, but the boys are all about business. They are immediately like, we're here for a favor. Turns out Irla and Emma, I didn't realize how similar that was. That's going to be difficult to say. Irla and Emma are investigating the same thing. The Fae are also looking into these dead bodies. That's why Irla was there that night. Because remember, the Fae have also been killed. And so because of that run-in, they know that Emma is also interested in the case. So they're like, we need a favor. We're going to give you some information that we think will help you. And then you're going to, we scratch your back, you scratch ours kind of thing. What is the information that they have? So part of the writing on the bodies, they managed to translate the first line. And they're sort of like, you can use that as your Rosetta Stone. We want you to translate the rest. It's apparently a very ancient language in fairy, and the fairy king has actually forbidden them from translating it themselves because he believes it's part of a potentially very dangerous spell. And if the fae were to translate it, it could mean very bad things. They're basically like, we could awake something very horrible, so we're taking precautions, which is nice and honestly rare for a Cassandra Clare character. Someone who can see like 2 steps ahead. Yeah, so they're like, Emma, you do it. You do the scary thing. And this whole time, Julian has been sitting there fuming. All he can think about is like, you are the guys that stole my brother. And he's basically like, even if you are helping Emma, I don't fucking like you guys. And the Fae are like, yeah, we don't really like you either. You're a shadowhunter, like of all people. But they say you're literally the only people we can turn to because everyone else has shunned us because of your stupid little cold peace treaty. And we have something you want. What is that something that they want? Another fairy enters the villa and takes off his hood. There was Mark Blackthorn.
Thank you very much. I am so excited to be here. Yes.
Marky Mark, yeah, he goes to say something and immediately Irla is like, hey, zip it. You don't get to speak without my permission. So clearly they are all part of the wild hunt and Mark is still on the lowest rung of the food chain. Irla clearly gets to call the shots here and Emma can sense how much control it's taking for Julian to not rush to his brother. Julian is like, okay, so what? We translate this, we solve the murders, and we get Mark back? Like, you are Fae. You need to tell me exactly what this deal is. Because remember, the Fae are very tricky. They can't lie, but they can speak in a very convenient way. But Kieran is like, actually, we're going to be a lot more generous than that. We're giving you Mark right now. Pardon? Kieran says, yeah, Mark is going to help with the translation and kind of keep an eye on this. And if this investigation is successful, Mark gets to choose if he'll stay with you or come back to us. Julian and Emma are like, fuck you, he's a Blackthorn. Like, there's not going to be any choice. He's staying with us. And Kieran is like, yeah, I wouldn't be so sure. Also, the line that they give Emma to help her translation, this like the Rosetta Stone, it's going to help her translate the whole thing, literally is simply, quote, fire to water. Emma's got her work cut out for her, right? And by the way, who else has been eavesdropping? Diana, because Diana was there the whole time. And she's like helpless to stop any of this from happening. And she's just like, okay, I guess we're investigating with the fairies now. The 2 fairies, Irla and Kieran, excuse themselves, leaving one fairy standing there, Mark. He raises his head slowly. He's so much narrower, more angular than Emma remembered him. He didn't seem to have aged so much as sharpened. Now he has 2 colored eyes, and he's staring straight at Julian. His voice, when it finally came out, sounded rough and scraped as if he hadn't used it in days. Father? He said. And then, as Julian drew in a startled breath, Mark collapsed to the floor in a dead faint. The gang brings Mark into his room, which again, they have kept exactly as it was before he disappeared or was taken. All the kids crowd around to see their lost brother. And that's when Ty notices Mark is bleeding. Jules immediately grabs a stele and goes to draw a healing rune on Mark, and he flips out. He goes from unconscious to enraged in a blink of an eye. He's screaming. He starts hitting Julian to get him away, and he seems really confused. He's like calling everybody a liar. All of the kids are terrified. And that's when Christina steps in. Remember, her whole interest in life is building peace between the Fae and Shadowhunters. So she's immediately like, hey kids, why don't you head to the garage? We packed up some of Mark's stuff. Why don't you go get that to make him feel more at home? Basically get them the fuck out of this room where this man is freaking out. And then she tells Julian and Emma to like back the fuck up. She's like, give him space. And Julian is enraged. He's like, why would they hurt him? Why would they give him to us bleeding? And Christina's like, so that you did exactly what you just did. The Fae are so clever and sneaky. They definitely knew that if you saw your brother bleeding, you would try and heal him. And they know that Mark is clearly scared of Shadowhunters now. And Julian is like, he hates me. What am I supposed to do? And so for now, Christina is like, I'm going to stay with him. He doesn't know me. Clearly, he's like confused looking at Julian. He keeps thinking Julian is his father. He hasn't seen you guys in 5 years. You guys have grown and he hasn't been there, and he's scared and he's been brainwashed. She's like, in this case, a stranger is better than someone that he thinks is dead, basically. Like, think of Tavi. Tavi was 2. This guy could barely string a sentence together, and now he's a 7-year-old. That's not the same boy that Mark knew, right? So she's like, I'll be the new face. I'm going to take care of him. Why don't you go be with your siblings? And we've got 3 weeks to catch this murderer. Very quickly, Emma and Julian run over to Malcolm Fade's house to ask him for help because he seemed to have recognized at least the runes. They were like, maybe he knows, he's old, right? Who would know an ancient language better than a very old person? So they give Malcolm what they have, and they're like, if you could get back to us, that'd be awesome. The investigation begins in earnest. Back at the house, Tina is actually camped outside of Mark's room when Livy and Ty come back from the garage. They come back with a box of some of Mark's things, and they're like really excited to just make him feel welcome. They're like, we want him to know that we want him here. One of the things that they have is a quilt. Mark is still sleeping and Tina lets them in. Ty goes to put the quilt over sleeping Mark, and Mark freaks out. Once again, he goes from unconscious to crazy person in like a blink of an eye, and he ends up throwing Ty across the room. He's like, who are you? And Ty is like, I'm Ty, I'm Tiberius, I'm your brother. And Mark is like, Tiberius is a little boy, who the fuck are you? And Ty is very clearly written to be on the spectrum. He doesn't like to be touched in a certain way. He doesn't deal well with loud noises. He's having a really, really horrible time with this, not just because it's a horrible situation, but like everything that makes him uncomfortable is happening all at once. He's just kind of cowering in the corner when Livy, who's carrying a box of like thoughtfully collected gifts for her brother, drops that. She's like, fuck this. Drops all the gifts for Mark, picks up a sword, and instead holds the sword to Mark's neck. And she is like, if you touch my brother again, you're gonna meet grown-up Livy.
That my best friend. She a real bad bitch.
She will always protect Ty. And for some reason, that gets through to Mark. I feel like Livy has just always been really true to herself. And so something about the way that she said that, Mark is like, Livia? He's like, I know that attitude. That's my little sister. And the second he says her name, Livy bursts into tears because she's missed her brother so much. This family is so close. And while this is happening, Tina is standing in the corner, and all she can think is like, damn, I wish Julian and Emma were here, because even though she's sobbing, that sword that she's holding to Mark's throat doesn't even quiver. Ty takes this moment of distraction to get the fuck out. He just runs out of the room. Livy follows. Christina is about to leave the room as well when Mark is kind of like, do I know you? And Christina's like, nope. I've heard of you, but I'm new to the Institute as well. He's sort of like, thank God, finally someone I haven't forgotten. Like, thank God you're a new face, which is exactly what Christina thought as well. If you don't know me and I don't know you, We won't have any expectations of who I am or what I'm like. He says, I can be anyone to you. Then he turns to see what the twins had brought them, the basket that Livy just like tossed to the side. And these kids aren't idiots, right? Like they study downworlders, they study the Fae. So Livy and Ty made him welcome gifts, and he's a Fae, so like gifts are very, very important to their culture. So when he goes and looks in the basket, he's actually really touched, and you can tell that like Mark isn't actually angry or meaning to be violent. He's just incredibly confused. I think Livy and Ty couldn't have given him a better gift. He's just like treasuring his little cup of butter. Okay, but let's check in with our Parvati again. Julian and Emma have not spoken. Julian was sort of like, I don't even know if I wanted a Parvati. Or at least they haven't had a serious conversation. Like they've been running some errands, you know, but it's still a little tense. So they're driving home when Julian just slams on his brakes. His grip on the wheel is tight. His jaw is set. And he's just like, I didn't mean it. I didn't mean it. Emma's sitting there in the passenger seat like, you good? What's going on? And Julian is like, you being my Parvati is the best thing in my entire life. And Emma can tell this is the beginning of one of Julian's like speeches. So she unbuckles her seatbelt and like flips herself so that she's facing him. Emma like grabs his face with both of her. She's like hands on his cheeks, listening very intently. And he says, Emma. There was a raw pain in his voice. Emma, I said what I said because sometimes I think I asked you to be my Parvati because I just wanted you to be tied to me. I lost so many people and I didn't want to lose you. And now I'm worried I took something away from you. Like I trapped you in this house with these kids. And we are sort of in his POV. So as the reader, we can tell that he's holding something back. He's dying to tell her something and he's about to crack when the phone rings. God damn it, Cassie Clare. Emma just says, Jules, you gave me a family. You gave me everything. You didn't take anything away from me. And then she looks down at the phone and sees a text that Mark woke up and he's screaming. Julian, as quickly as he slammed on the brakes, he floors it. They've got to get back to Mark. And that text, the timing is a little bit weird. That text is about Mark screaming at Ty. Christina's kind of already got it relatively under control, but Mark is going in and out of these kind of psychotic episodes. So when Julian comes in, he starts screaming all over again because he just cannot believe that Julian is Julian. But he also lets us know why he's being so crazy. Apparently, the fairies have been torturing him with images of his siblings being killed over and over and over. And so Mark is like, I thought you all were dead. Like, I thought all of you died horrible deaths. And now you're all 5 years older and doing fine? Like, what am I supposed to think? And so Julian says, I'll tell you something only I would know. He's like, only something the two of us would know. Mark, would you believe me then? And so he tells Mark the very last words he said to Julian during the war, because Mark was old enough to go run off and fight. So if we think back to the Mortal Instruments, Mark grabbed Julian by the shoulders and he said, stay with Emma. They stare at each other for a moment and something clicks. Mark immediately throws his arms around Julian and he just keeps sobbing. He's just like, my brother. Like he really thought that he lost him. And even though Julian is so happy that he's broken through and like, oh, we've got Mark back, you know, he also knows that Mark isn't going to be the older brother that he was. He'll sort of just be another person that Julian has to care for. He loves his family, but this kid is so tired. And he's just sort of like, ugh, a weight has been lifted, but a whole nother weight has been settled on my shoulders. He says it's just another burden for his heart to bear. A little bit later, we're down in the library with Emma and the rest of the kids. They're mapping everything out. They got a little help from Magnus as well. And they basically find that like the convergence of all of the ley lines is somewhere in the middle of the ocean, like way out past Catalina Island. Everybody assumes like, okay, dead end. That didn't work out. Let's try something else. When who walks into the library but Julian and Mark?
Thank you.
This is the first time that Mark has left his room. Julian, after they had their great reunion, Julian convinced him, like, listen, come down. I promise you, your siblings love you. This is a safe place. Like, they'll understand. Like, you just need to talk to them. And we need to do it soon. So come on down. So Mark is like super awkward, but he greets everybody. Somebody hands him a coffee because Mark used to be a coffee addict previously, and he has now learned that he fucking hates it. He takes a sip and he's like, what is this? Livy is like, that's fine that you don't like coffee. What about an apple? And Mark is like, thank you, my gracious sister, because he still speaks like a fairy. Livy immediately turns to Julian and she's like, the fuck? You don't call me gracious sister. And Julian is like, Livy, it's because I know you too well.
That my best friend. She a real bad bitch. Got a
Mark is like, well, what are you guys working on? How can I help? And they show him the map and Mark is like, I don't know where you guys got this, but this ley line map is all wrong. He's like, I can find you or I can draw you a new one, but you're working with wrong information. The gang looks pissed. They all groan and they're just like, ah. And Mark is like, did I do something wrong? And Ty is like, no, you really helped us. We would have wasted so much time. And we'll soon find that actually the dynamic between Ty and Mark is really great because Mark can't lie and Ty likes things to be said exactly. Just say it how you mean it, right? So they actually learn to really understand each other quite well. And this is the beginning of that. So there's just like this happy moment and Mark is like, yeah, no, I'll get right on it. Like I'll help you with the map. But you know who would really help? We need Helen. When is she getting here? And the happy moment sours real quick. Julian is sort of like, why don't we go to your room and I'll explain? And Mark is like, where is my full-blooded sister? And they are really close in age, him and Helen. They're really close. He's like, tell me where the fuck my sister is. And so they have to explain the ending of the war. Like Mark didn't even know that. So like he doesn't know about the Cold Peace Treaty. He doesn't know anything. So when they explain that, he gets so mad. He starts screaming again. So Mark is like, I guess I've come back to a world where I'm not wanted. And he slams his way out of the library. Later that evening, we are in Julian's studio. So his mom was an artist, as is Julian. If that hasn't been expressed enough, he is a moody, artsy boy. Okay, so when we said that his room was filled with murals, he drew those. He's very talented. So he has his studio, but he also has like a little separate room that nobody goes in. That is his own private space, not even Emma. And Emma's not even mad about it. She's like, honestly, the boy deserves it. Like he needs to have a tiny space that's just his. But Emma and Tavi are hanging out with Jules in the studio, just kind of decompressing from the day. And Tavi also has a lot of trouble falling asleep. So he's normally just like half awake around people. Okay, so we're hoping that hanging out in the studio with Emma and Julian will eventually lull him to sleep. Okay, and Julian is like, oh, Emma, hey, I haven't showed you what I was working on while I was in England. I've got a new project. He has been making a deck of tarot cards. You can actually look them up. I believe people have made really good fan art of these, but he has made a deck of tarot cards and just changed them to be members of his family. Like for Mark, it's the prisoner. Helen is the separated. Ty is the genius, etc. And Ty, who again is going in and out of sleep, he's listening to this and he's like, what card is Emma gonna get? You never draw Emma. And it is true. It is true. Julian has never, not once, not even a doodle, drawn Emma. Let's put a pin in that. Tavi isn't the only one who's tired. Julian is also about to drop. So he's like, listen, Emma, before I go to sleep, like, I just want to say I'm really sorry. I've been acting so weird. I just like with Mark showing up and I thought it would all be fine and I still feel horrible. And he's about to kind of go on one of his famous spiels when Tavi does a big ol' yawn and he immediately snaps into strong older brother mode. And he's just like, I'll stop complaining. It's just been a rough couple of days, hasn't it? And I'm gonna take this one to bed. So he kind of gathers up Tavi, swings him over his shoulder, and he's like, I'll see you in the morning, okay? So you better go to bed too. And Emma's like, yeah, I just got a thing to do. And Julian, of course, can kind of read her mind. And he's like, Emma, don't, but she's already gone. Where did Emma go? What's the thing that she needs to do? She goes straight to Mark Blackthorn's door. She starts banging on it. She's like, Mark Blackthorn, you open this door right now. I don't care that you have PTSD. Of course, Mark doesn't answer. So she uses an opening rune to get in the door. But the room is empty. Emma is like, ugh, and she turns to go back in the hallway when she runs face first into Drew, our little Drew, who hasn't been around that much because she's always just like in her room doing spooky girl things, and we love her for that. She also moves with absolute silence. So Emma is like, holy shit, Drew, I've told you to like announce yourself. And Drew is just like, yeah, you probably can't find Mark because he's on the roof where he always goes. How does Drew know this? Nobody knows. She's got eyes everywhere. This girl. I will also say, because there's like no good space to put this in, Drew is 13. She's going through puberty and she's chubby. She's a chubby girl and she is not comfortable with the changes in her body. And she has just spent the entire summer being like made fun of or like picked apart by her British aunts who are like, you need to diet, you need to do all of this stuff. I'm really interested to see what Drew will be like in the upcoming series. Not only is she just like a spooky girl, but she's also very shy because she's a 13-year-old girl dealing with her body image. And we love her. So we'll see what she's like in the later book. But anyway, Drew is like, you got to get on the roof, girl. Off you go. Emma has no problem with high places, so she immediately gets on the roof. Her kind of rage has cooled a little bit. Mark is trying to tell her, he's like, listen, I'm trying my best, but I feel like I'm in a dream that is oscillating between dream and nightmare. Like, I just wish I could talk to Helen. I feel like Helen would understand. And Emma is like, well, honey, if you hadn't run off, we could have explained Skype to you. Like, your siblings aren't the only things that have grown in the past 5 years. We've got video chat. But then Mark is like, well, listen, I can find where the ley lines converge even without the map. He's basically like, I have fucked up so much in the past like 48 hours. I want to do something good. I want to prove that I'm worthy. Let's go. Like, I can go find the point of convergence. Let's go right now. And Emma is like, I'll go wake up Julian. And Mark is like, no, just you and me. Let's go do this for my family. And Emma is sort of like, this sounds like a crazy idea, but also she can like sense that Mark, if she says no, it will kind of close him off to her forever. So she's like, listen, while he is excited and open about this, fuck it. Let's go. What could go wrong? You know? And so how do they get there? How do they get around Los Angeles on Mark's flying motorcycle? Let me take a step back. Mark is part of the Wild Hunt, right? So they all have usually it's like a horse. All of the Fae ride their horses across the sky or whatever. But when they enter the mortal realm, their steed, their horse, can change into whatever it needs to be, like a rideable object. So Mark has a motorcycle that is, in another life, a fairy horse. Okay, and it can still fly. So off they go, and Mark basically can feel, because he's part Fae, he can feel the magic. So he's sort of like gonna follow the ley lines and sense where they converge, and Emma's just along for the ride. At one point, they're flying over the ocean, checking these ley lines, when the motorcycle like falters and kind of falls, like they just free fall. And Emma keeps her cool. She actually kind of enjoys it. She's insane. She's an adrenaline junkie, right? And that is when Mark turns to her once they survive. Once they get the motorcycle under control, he turns to her and he says, Emma, if you're ever done being a shadow hunter, you would absolutely be welcomed to join the Wild Hunt. And so bit by bit, we're getting through to Mark. And he's feeling more like he's home. Eventually, he's so confident in her that he lets her drive the flying motorcycle. He figures out where the lines converge. So he points her, he's like, why don't you land us there? Not realizing that he's never taught her how to land a flying motorcycle. So she crashes. Minor crash. And as they're like coming out of the wreckage, she is like, Emma, you are so reckless. You drive way too fast. And Emma's cracking up. She's like, there it is. There's that blackthorn blood. You sound just like Julian. And Mark kind of laughs too, and he's like, well, it did bring me joy. He said, it was as if I was flying with the hunt again, and I tasted the blood of the sky. And Emma's like, all right, I take that back. You sound like Julian on drugs. Where they have crash landed, they basically find this weird cave. They're sort of on a seaside cliff. And something that Mark immediately clocks, because he's a fairy and he's attuned with nature, is that there's a lot of non-native poisonous plants surrounding the entrance of the cave and like in the cave as well. But of course, that doesn't stop them. They go deeper into the cave and they find writing all over the walls, many different languages. Some of them are Bible passages. They also find this really weird glass portal looking thing, like this big almost window. And then there's this giant circle on the ground. Once they get to like the kind of main room of the cave, there's a huge circle on the ground and Emma is like, "Ooh, Mark, don't step." He stepped in it. Mark just like bounds right in. And Emma is like, "Please, if a spell kills you, it is going to be so awkward to explain this to Jules. Like, we gotta be smarter than this, Marky baby." Luckily, nothing actually happens to Mark, but he does find a wallet. And within the wallet, he finds a license. And that license belongs to the dead body that they found. So whoever he was, his name was Stanley. And he's connected here. But before they can be like, "Yes, a clue, great," shit hits the fan, as it always does. Because what is standing between them, the cave entrance, and their flying motorcycle, their only way of getting home? A massive herd of demons. They're called mantis demons. I'm picturing them as like giant praying mantises. They're wobbling around, they're chittering, and then they attack. Luckily, Emma literally is never without her sword, so at least they can fight. And so Emma and Mark are like, "Okay, we're gonna fight our way through them, get to the motorcycle, fly away." Literally, as they're saying this, one of the praying mantis demons picks up their motorcycle and throws it off the cliff. So they're like, "Okay, change of plan." There is a long, epic demon fight scene when something comes tearing up the road. What is it? A red Toyota. Julian Blackthorne is on the roof with a crossbow, immediately fighting off the demons. Christina is at the wheel, like swinging this car around. And together, the four of them kill off the demons. I love the real life aspect because, of course, teenagers would be driving a beat up red Toyota to come help their friends fight demons.
It's Brittany, bitch.
They get in the car. Mark is injured. Julian, as always, is like, "Healing rune. I got it right here. We got to do this." And Mark is like, "I will jump out of this car if you touch me with that stele." Christina is very much like, "Oh, no, you will not." And she immediately switches on the child locks. She's like, "Not while I'm driving. Nobody's getting out of this car." And Emma is trying to like lighten the mood. She's like, "Wow, what a coincidence. That's amazing that you guys found us." And Christina is like, "You have GPS on your phone." And she's like, "Yeah, but you didn't know we were in trouble." And Julian and Christina like both turn to the back seat and they're like, "You're Emma Carstairs. Of course you were in trouble." They drive to a local eatery, and since it's by the beach, they have like some surf showers in the back. Julian grabs Mark. He's like, "Listen, we're gonna get you cleaned up. Like, if you're not gonna let me heal you, we're gonna at least wash off some of the blood." Julian shows him where the showers are, and Mark just turns it on over all of his clothes. And Julian is like, "Oh, okay, well, you're all wet, so that's fine." But everything is not fine because Emma is about to get yelled at by Julian. Because remember, they're Parbatai, which means they share pain. And like if one of them dies, it is almost more painful for the Parbatai who lives to like go through that. He says, "You literally can't do this to me. What if you died?" And Emma actually gives us a vulnerable moment. She's like, "Listen, I'm a little insecure sometimes about that. Like, I'm not a Blackthorn." She says, "I'm only at the Institute because you brought me there, Julian, as your Parbatai. I feel like sometimes I'm being tested, like I'm worthy of being there. So I take dumb risks." There was something in Julian's eyes, something breaking open. Julian says, "I'm not testing you, Emma. You've proved everything to me already." There was this wild feeling in Emma's blood, the desire to seize Julian, to do something, crush his hands in hers, put her arms around him. She couldn't understand it, and it terrified her. So she just moved away and said, "We should get back to Mark and Christina." The next day, they update Diana, sort of, a little bit, enough that she doesn't freak out completely. They all agree that they need to monitor the convergence area, that cave. So they spend some time setting up monitors like cameras or heat sensors, whatever it is. Anytime there's movement around there, someone will get either a phone call or a text. All right. Speaking of calls and texts, Emma has been getting both of those from her ex-boyfriend, Cameron, but she hasn't been answering ever since they broke up, right? But she finally decides, she's like, "God damn it, this guy's blowing up my phone. I need the lines to be free so that I can deal with these demons. What's up? Cameron. And before she can even really say hello, Cameron is like, I'm not calling you to get back together. Just want to put that out there. Cameron went to the shadow market again, and Johnny Rook has been gossiping about Emma. Basically, someone at the shadow market is saying that Emma is poking her nose into business that she shouldn't, and Cameron just wanted her to know that like her name is floating around the market, and that's never good. Thanks, Cammy. That's kind of nice. But that's not the end of breakfast drama. Okay, we're all sitting around the table. Emma has hung up the phone like, what the fuck? When Mark strolls in, and what the fuck is he wearing but Shadowhunter gear? And this is really remarkable because what I didn't mention is that at dinner last night, Mark and Julian got into another fight about drawing a healing rune, blah, blah, blah. And Mark lets us know that, remember how the fairies tortured him with images of his siblings being killed? They also tortured him with runes. Like instead of using a stele, they would carve fake runes into his arms with knives. They just constantly tortured him because of his Shadowhunter blood. Like Shadowhunters consider him a fae, fae consider him a Shadowhunter. But he comes in looking pretty determined in his normal kind of Shadowhunter uniform. And he looks at Julian and says, Jules, I was so out of line last night. There are things that the Clave has done to me to make me hate the Shadowhunters, obviously, but that doesn't mean I hate my Shadowhunter family. I know you love me, and I'm proud to be a Shadowhunter. I don't know where I belong, but if you let me, I'll try to belong here. There was a moment of silence at the table. Emma has her spoon like halfway to her mouth. She's just frozen. When Jules says, why don't you sit down, Mark, and I'll make you some eggs. Now it's the point of the book where we get like a couple really quick scenes just to kind of character build and show the kind of relationship dynamics we're dealing with. Sir, Diana is here to help them with their test. Twice a year, the kids need to pass like just very basic training tests to like become Shadowhunters, right? They do like fighting stuff and then they do like history, whatever, okay? Lucky for Ty, no math. However, unlucky for Ty, there's a lot of combat stuff, right? Like sword fighting, etc. He's not into it. He's got his headphones on. Like today's just not a good day. Okay. He's got his headphones on. He's sitting out. And Diana knows how to handle this. She's known Ty his whole life. But for some reason, Uncle Arthur decides to come in and see how his nieces and nephews are doing. And he starts screaming at Ty. And just a reminder, like, the Shadowhunters notoriously do not like people who are different. This is a homophobic society. This is a society that doesn't believe in mental illness. This is a society, okay? And Arthur is of that mindset. Okay, so he has no empathy for Ty. He's just like, take your fucking headphones off and start fighting. And Ty is like, okay, number one, no, I don't need to take my headphones off. And number two, I'm not gonna be one of those Shadowhunters that fights. I'm not a Jace Herondale. It's not my style, okay? Luckily, somehow, Mark is able to put himself between Uncle Arthur and Ty, and they actually have a really sweet moment. Again, like I said, like Ty and Mark seem to really understand each other differently than everybody else. And so Mark is able to help Ty finish the test, basically, and kind of tell Arthur to fuck off. And this is when Diana pulls Jules aside, Julian. She's like, listen, Ty is 15. We need to start talking about like his future. And he just said it himself. He doesn't want to be the kind of Shadowhunter that fights. Okay, this is a boy who is obsessed with Sherlock Holmes. He's very particular. He's so brilliant. He's a genius. We need to talk about the Skolemans. It's where he wants to be. And Julian is like, yes, he's a genius. He deserves to be there. But as we just mentioned, the Shadowhunter Society is fucked. And Julian is basically like, he's safe here in LA, right? Where I call the shots. But if he were to go to Alicante, if he were to go to the Skolemans, etc., he's going to be a lot deeper in Shadowhunter Society. Even things like dyslexia. If your child is dyslexic, they are shunned. We need like these quote unquote perfect warriors. Anyone who has something slightly different about them, genuinely shunned. And he never wants to make Ty feel like there's something wrong with him. And Diana is like, I hear you, okay? I love Ty so much, but you also need to let your birds fly. We can't keep him caged up. You gotta let him make that choice himself. She says, Julian, you cannot keep this family safe the way you are running it now because you're already out of gas, my friend. And what's going to happen when the cracks start to widen? Like everyone can see Julian is at his breaking point. We also get a really cute scene where Mark is playing with Tavi and he accidentally rips Tavi's pet lemur stuffed toy and it is devastating to Tavi when Christina is like, actually, this is perfect. This is great. She runs up to her room, brings down her bear named Oso, which means bear in Spanish. She's like, yeah, I'm not very creative in the naming department. And she's like, Tavi, I haven't been able to give Oso the attention he deserves. What if you take him? And all is well, all is new. Mark went from feeling like he ruined Tavi's life to Tina saving the day. And everyone seems to be having a good time, except for Emma, because when this little scene unfolds and Tina saves the day and Tavi looks really happy, Julian apparently looks at Christina as if she brought him water in the desert. Because Julian's whole entire life is keeping his siblings happy, and so he didn't have to do anything. Tina saving the day, he was like, oh my God, thank you, Lord. And Emma can't help but think back to what Livy said about how Julian and Christina would be such a great couple, and she feels this inexplicable sting in her heart watching that scene unfold. Next on the agenda, because remember, we've got a serial killer to track down. Remember that Mark found a license in the weird cave? So the name is Stanley Wells. Turns out there's 14 of them in the Los Angeles area. So Julian and Emma hop in the car and they're gonna go find him. They're gonna track him down. And this is where Julian is happiest. Stuck in LA traffic, just him and Emma shooting the shit in the car. Call Me Maybe on the radio.
Hey, I just met you.
Julian randomly is like, hey, have you heard from Clare in a while? You know, is her and Jace are still together, right? And Emma is like, if they broke up, I would not believe in love. She's literally like, who would break up with Jace? Like, I would be concerned about Clary's mental health. And Julian is like, oh, really, tough girl? Like, I didn't think you believed in love. And then he's like, that was weird. Forget I said that. Enough about Clare and Isabel. And he tries to change the subject and Emma's like, we weren't talking about Isabel. And Julian's like, oh, we weren't? He's like, you know, Isabel was my first crush. And Emma's like, of course Isabel was your first crush. Are you kidding me? She's about to go in. She was like, when we were 12, you couldn't stop staring at her. I thought you were gonna kill Simon, like blah, blah, blah. But luckily they arrive at their final destination. At this point, it's nighttime. It's dark. They've gone to 13 different houses looking for Stanley Wells. They're somewhere up in the Hollywood Hills at this point. Get their gear on. They start to put runes on each other in the dark of the car. Emma could feel his hair brush against her cheek, the faint scent of cloves that hung around him. She remembered what Christina said about how Julian had nice hands. She wondered if she'd ever really looked at them before. Were they nice? They were Julian's hands. They were hands that painted and fought. They've never failed him. And in that way, they were beautiful. So Emma can't put it together. Why she's having heart palpitations and a sick feeling in her stomach, thinking about other girls dating Julian, and now she's obsessed with his hands. We've got a girl down. We've got a girl down really bad. Meanwhile, it is her turn to draw runes on him. When the second the stele touches his skin, Julian kind of shivers, which is weird. And so she grabs him a little tighter to hold him still. And he draws in a sharp breath. And he's like, yeah, you know, I'm good. We don't need runes. For this one, I got my crossbow. We're probably not gonna find anything here. Let's just, let's go. And he like stumbles awkwardly out of the car. So again, what could go wrong? They approach this house that's completely dark inside, and Emma like leans into the window next to the front door trying to see in, and she's like, I don't think anybody's home. And then she flings herself back because something slams against the window. Emma reaches for a knife in her boot and she's like, what kind of demon is that? And Julian is like, I think it's a miniature poodle. I'm almost positive. In fact. So anyway, that demon vanquished. Nobody's answering the front door. They decide to check in the back first. They see a giant pool that hasn't been cleaned in a while. There's like jacaranda leaves all over the place, pine needles, etc. But that's not what they hone in on, because there is a body floating in the pool. And Emma had seen a lot of dead bodies before, but there was something really wrong with this one. This woman was so skinny you could see her spine perfectly, and one of her hands is cut off jaggedly. They end up finding her purse, which is by the pool, and Emma checks and she hasn't been answering. She has like missed calls for at least 2 days, so they're assuming she's been dead that long. And as she's putting the phone back in the bag, Emma hears the distinct click of a crossbow loading. Without looking or thinking, she throws herself at Jules, Someone is on the roof shooting at them. Emma jumps up there, no problem, because she's crazy and she trains for shit like this. She somehow gets onto the roof and is chasing this guy, but he manages to get away. And on top of that, he was wearing a mask. So Emma's like, I didn't even get a good look at him. And she starts jogging back to where she left Jules. This dumb boy is bleeding because not only did he get shot by an arrow, but then he pulled it out. And Emma is like, dude, rule number 1 of arrows, you don't pull it out. Like it makes the hole like 5 times bigger. Are you crazy? And Julian is like still holding the arrow in his hand. And he's like, I know, but it wasn't a normal arrow. Kind of stung. Emma moves faster than she ever had in her life, but she still wasn't there in time to catch him before he hit the ground. New day. Let's finish this story. While Julian and Emma are in big trouble, Mark is at home. He's sitting on the roof. He has just finally used the wonders of Skype, rest in peace, I think, to call Helen. And that was just really good for him, but he's still feeling out of place. He wasn't invited to help Julian and Emma because he is still refusing to use runes. And Julian is basically like, I'm not letting you go fight demons if you're not going to put on protection runes. Ironic, because remember, Julian didn't want protection runes because Emma touching him made him feel things. But anyway, hypocrisy aside, Christina ends up going up to the roof to check on him, and they have a cute little chat, and he's basically telling her like, yeah, I feel like nobody trusts me. Nobody counts me in as a shadow hunter. And Christina is like, well, I can't help you with the PTSD of all of your fairy rune torture, but I can do a makeover because Mark at this time still has like flowy fairy hair. And Christina's like, let's get you to looking like you did before you left. Like, let's give you a little haircut. They have this cute little makeover bonding moment in his room. And then something weird happens. She finishes her job. She's looking around for a mirror to show Mark what she's done. And he's like, oh, don't even worry about it. We don't have mirrors in Fairy. I learned this cool trick to like how to see my reflection. And he's basically like, hold still. He says, I've learned I could use the eyes of another. So if you just look at me and let me get a little close, I can see my reflection. Christina leans forward. She doesn't know why she does. She's just like, without question, is like, okay. She looks into his eyes and they stay fixed on hers, as if he couldn't imagine anything more fascinating than looking at her. Beautiful, he finally said. Tina's trying to be like, yeah, I did a good job. She's trying to sound teasing, but she ends up just sounding nervous. No, he said on a soft exhale, and his hand slid over hers. Her heart gave an uneven leap in her chest when Mark's bedroom door opens. Goddamn. Ty and Livy are like, hey, don't know what's going on. We've got an emergency. They just got a text from Emma. Speaking of Emma, where is she? She is tearing up the Hollywood Hills, which if you've ever driven those, God bless you, Emma. She's in the little red Toyota. She's got a bleeding Julian in the back seat and she's trying to get to a good meeting place. There's basically a diner that the family goes to a lot. She was just kind of like, parking lot, Julian's bleeding. Meet me there. So hopefully help will be on the way once she gets there. She has drawn like 3, 4, 5 healing runes on Julian. They're not working. Whatever was up with this arrow that, remember, Julian was like, it was stinging, it was burning. Whatever that was is stopping any magic from healing him. Julian is still conscious at this point, and Emma is like, I'm gonna call the Silent Brothers. This is above my pay grade. Like, we really need help. And Julian is like, no, remember, we're not supposed to be investigating this. How are we supposed to explain what we're doing? And remember, at this point now, this investigation for Emma is finding answers about her parents, but for Julian, he's thinking if they solve this, they'll get Helen back. So he also doesn't want this to get taken away from them, right? They pull into the parking lot. Emma jumps into the back seat, pulls off Julian's jacket to look at the wound, and she's just like, you dumbass. She says, I can't believe you pulled the arrow out. Why would you do that? And Jules is like, I'm sorry. When someone shoots you with an arrow, your immediate response is not, thanks for the arrow. I think I'll keep it. Of course I took it out. And he's like, either way, it was burning, clearly not a normal wound. Leave me alone, woman. Let's just figure out how to stop the bleeding before you yell at me. That's when Emma, in order to get into like a good position to like keep drawing healing runes on the wound, she like straddles him in the back seat and she pretty immediately is like, oh, Julian is like dead still. He swallows visibly and is like, just draw the runes. Just draw them. But the runes, which again, usually when you draw them, they kind of look like tattoos for a while. They keep fading into his skin, like black ice melting. She could see her own reflection in his eyes. She looked wrecked, panicked, blood on her neck and white tank top. And Julian's like trying to be supportive. He's like, yeah, oh, it hurts less. Wow, that was a great rune, Emma. Even though it's not doing shit. And at this point, his skin is reaching dangerous levels of hot and he's starting to look a little squirrely in the eyes. So Emma is like, fuck it, I'm getting help. She goes to get out of the car when Julian like grabs her arm and kind of pulls her back on top of him. And he's like, just answer me this, girl. Again, he's delirious at this point. He grabs her closer, his fingers curling around the back of her neck. He's like, did you kiss Mark the other night? And Emma's like, pardon? Me too. I'm like, Julian, are we reading the same book? What do you mean? Did Emma kiss Mark? Emma is just like, okay, you've lost too much blood. I'm gonna go get help. And Julian's like, no, I saw the way you looked at him.
I know, but he's so cute.
She's like, I'm getting the Silent Brothers. This is too much. And he's like, please. The desperation clear in his voice. He's like, no, just try one more time. You know, you'll fix this. We're Parvati. He says, we're forever. I said that to you once. Do you remember? You can do it. The things we do together are extraordinary. Just try one more time. And so she does. Emma, remember, intensity, all right? Intense is her middle name. She focuses the fuck up and thinks about every memory she has with Julian. So basically her entire life. And as she's going over these memories, something in her chest seems to split and crack, and she marveled that it wasn't audible. She draws the rune over and over and over again. She's frantic. Emma couldn't have stopped if she wanted to. She was blind with memories, a kaleidoscope of them, all of them, Julian. And when she stopped, the rune she had drawn seemed lit from within, a soft glow, and the wound was closing. She looked down at Julian as he looked up at her, as if she were a miracle. They both slump onto the seat when the car door flies open, and Livy is like, God damn, it looks like a mad scientist was at work here. Who shot you, Julian? Everyone is pretty freaked out. I think Ty is probably the most freaked out because he's doing the math. He's like, that's a lot of blood everywhere. Humans can only lose a certain amount of blood. I think that this is the exact amount of blood a human can use. What are we gonna do? Has the wound closed? Are we good? For a boy who doesn't like math, he sure pays attention to statistics. But luckily they're in a diner parking lot, so they do what the Blackthorn family does best. They grab a booth and they order the whole damn menu. And so was that trip a total bust? No. Okay, even though they did lose the woman's phone, they did find in her purse a weird little golden ticket. And the paper says, the followers of The Guardian invite you to the lottery. This month's performance, August 11th, 7 p.m., the Midnight Theater. This ticket admits one group semi-formal attire. So if you go way back to the prologue, when I mentioned that Kit was walking around and he's generally protected by his dad's reputation, but he did run into a cult member that was like, join our cult. They are called the Followers. So we've actually already been introduced to the Followers once before. Julian thinks this is weird, but you know what? August 11th is the next day. So they're like, let's go home. Let's see if we have any semi-formal attire and let's follow our only clue. Now, Mark and Christina are also here. Nobody really remarks about Mark's new sexy haircut, but he somehow has procured a new flying motorcycle. And Christina doesn't want him to go home by himself. So she's like, I'll go with you. Everyone else piles into the various vehicles that they have. They beat everyone to the Institute via flying motorcycle because LA traffic, man, not to be laughed at. So they're kind of bonding. She's asking him about what he misses from Fairy. She says, I can tell that your heart isn't fully here. I'm not even sure if you like us half the time. At this point, they're parked at the Institute. He turns off his motorcycle and he turns to Christina and he's like, I like you, he said. Christina Mendoza Rosales, I like you very much. And he leans in close to her, his one blue eye and one gold eye really close. And they hesitate for a moment when all of a sudden we hear Mark Blackthorn. The voice that spoke was sharp and clipped. Cassandra Clare and her interruptions, man. Oh, will be the death of me. Kieran is here. Kieran, the guy who dropped Mark off, the hottie. Apparently, the flying motorcycle that Mark is using, yeah, he borrowed it from Kieran. He needs to give it back, but Kieran doesn't look happy. So Mark is like, Christina, I'm gonna need you to go inside first. I'll be right in. He said, if you respect my privacy, please go inside. And so she does as she's told. She like gets into the foyer and then she's like, wait a damn minute. These fairies like tortured him. His body is covered in scars. I'm not gonna leave him alone with these motherfuckers. She turns around and stops dead in her tracks because where is Mark? Shoved up against a tree, making out with Kieran. It was very clear Mark was not being touched against his will. His hands were tangled in Kieran's hair, kissing him fiercely as if he were starving. Christina's frozen, couldn't have stopped watching them even if she wanted to, because of the shock and fascination rooting her to the spot. But that's not all that was stopping her. There was desire, whether for Mark or for both of them, or just for the idea of wanting someone so much. She wasn't sure, but desire was coursing through her veins. But then Julian and Emma roll up in the goddamn Toyota and the headlights like beam into Tina. So for a moment she's blinded and then Kieran is gone. And just so we're not super confused, we are given a very quick flashback of how Mark and Kieran even met. So they're both in the Wild Hunt. Mark is bullied because he's a shadow hunter. Kieran is bullied because he's like a kind of fairy prince, basically. They help each other get through it. Kieran's like, tell me about being a shadow hunter. And Mark is like, tell me about being a fairy prince.
Your mother is Japanese or something? Probably where you get your looks?
Half of them, yeah.
And your dad is, what, boring? Is that where you get your boring from?
Kieran basically helps Mark not lose his mind, and like Kieran's constant questioning about his shadowhunter-ness and his family really helped him. Like, he's the only reason why he didn't lose that side of him. You know, how when he came back, he like couldn't even remember who he was and he thought that his family was still 5 years younger than they were, that kind of thing. If Kieran hadn't been talking to him, that would have been so much worse, okay? So they really trauma bonded, essentially. Back home, we get dual mental breakdowns. Emma's in the shower, and now that things are quiet and she's alone, she's realizing like this is the closest she's ever gotten to losing Julian. The fact that Julian almost died, she's kind of scrambled. And then the whole like backseat of the car thing is really messing with her. She says she became aware of his physical presence in a way that almost hurt. She wanted to put her arms around him, press them together hard enough to seal their skin, interlock their bones. She's never felt that way before. And she's like, gee, I wonder what that means. These feelings, girl. Meanwhile, let's zoom in on Julian, who is having the exact same mental breakdown, except he is trying to coax Tabby down from having a nightmare. He's just like laying quietly in Tabby's room, thinking about how if he was gonna die, at least he was going to die really close to Emma. Remember, Emma was like sitting in his lap and he was just like, finally, thank God, if this is the last thing that I see. He said she was finally as close to him as she could possibly be, as would ever be allowed by the law. Because remember, Parvati cannot be romantically involved. Cassandra Clare couldn't do the sibling forbidden love thing twice, so she sneakily invented something that was just as close. In the Blackthorn Library, they actually have like books on Shadowhunter law, and the one about Parvati, there's a particular page that's actually like clearly worn more than any other one because of how many times Julian opens it to read it just to check if it changed. And it says, those who have undergone the ceremony of Parvati are forever bound by the terms of their oaths, blah, 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 blah. They shall not enter into marriage, shall not bear children together, shall not love each other in the manner of Eros. Punishment will be separation of the Parvati in question, exile from their families, and, should the criminal behavior continue, the stripping of their marks and expulsion from the Nephilium. Never again shall they walk as shadow hunters. And Emma, remember, her whole deal is she wants to be the best shadow hunter in the world. Okay, Julian is very much like, fuck it, I could go live in Siberia just with Emma and paint, and I would be the happiest man alive. Emma is like, no, I'm gonna be a shadow hunter. I'm gonna kill a lot of demons. And also, if we move to Siberia, I would never see Jace. Okay, this is a hypothetical conversation, but pretty sure that would be how it goes. And let me just tell you, this is where we fall apart. It is difficult to relay it to you this way because there are so many just like tiny, tiny moments. But Julian and Emma are like a horny mess for the rest of this book. They are incredibly emo about it. And welcome. Here we go. Starting with the next morning, we're at breakfast. Everybody's trying to be normal. They're talking about the plans for tonight. Remember, they're going to be going to that cult meeting. Emma randomly is sitting at the breakfast table and she just like stretches as one does, and her t-shirt lifts up a little bit, and Julian stops mid-sentence, whatever the fuck he was saying. He was just like, and he's just sitting there frozen, staring at her. And Emma is like, oh no. Yeah, Julian's beautiful. She, all of a sudden, she's like, wait, he's literally the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. And so she's having these thoughts, but also the other voice in her head is like, ugh, Julian would be so disgusted if he knew what like filthy, dirty thoughts were going through my head, because we're supposed to be Parbatai. He doesn't feel that way about me. I don't even know how I feel about him. This is so gross. I must hide this from him forever. And she has now decided in her like paranoia, her insecurity, she's like, maybe that's why Julian's been acting so weird since he's come back from England, is that he can see it written all over my face that I have these like lusty feelings for him. And so he wants to keep his distance. Girl. So she decides to separate herself from the Blackthorns today. And she's like, Tina, we don't have anything to wear tonight. Let's go shopping. Also, just something to put a pin in, Livy has been carrying this investigation on her back.
That my best friend, she a real bad bitch.
Livy's been working her ass off, and she's actually translated a significant amount of what needs to be translated. Not only what's on the body, but also remember there was all that writing on the cave? And weirdly enough, in the cave, it was an Edgar Allan Poe poem called Annabelle Lee. We're gonna return to that, but just know, let's give Livy her moment, okay? But the girls go shopping. We just get a really cute scene of the girls shopping together. Tina and Emma are really good friends. They're like always so supportive and lovely and uplifting to each other.
You're the what, not the...
I'm the one, not the two.
You're the what, not the...
I'm the one, not the two.
You're the...
I'm the one,
not the...
two.
Yeah, I love you.
They immediately clicked, and they're just really nice, okay, to each other. And the only time that the shopping trip kind of gets heavy is when Tina brings up like how lucky Emma is to be surrounded by so much love and support. And Emma kind of tries to pry more stuff out of Tina about like Mexico. And Christina says, some betrayals can't be forgiven. Please just let it go. And Emma does. For now. Back at home, Malcolm knocks on the door. Malcolm Fade, who has done fuck all with the translation. Okay, Livy's gonna solve this before he does. But he did analyze the poison that was in Julian's wound. And essentially, it was a really rare poison that totally should have killed him. Julian is like, yeah, lucky Emma got there in time and, you know, drew that healing rune. And Malcolm is like, yeah, no, that shouldn't have done it. Like even a Parbatai rune, because when you have a rune drawn by your Parbatai, it's stronger. He's like, yeah, even with that extra boost, you should be dead, man. He says, I don't know if it's something you did or something Emma did, but it is impossible that you are breathing right now. But tonight we have a party to go to. We are going to the cult meeting. The followers have invited us to the Guardian whatever. Semi-formal attire, so of course, we get a slow motion walking down the stairway scene. Emma's in some really nice dress and Julian is like jaw on the floor, drooling.
Congratulations, you just got your first slow motion entrance.
And then Mark appears. Mark, who, when the older siblings were like, hey, do you want to borrow my clothes? Like, do you need any help? He was like, no, I got this. I can do semi-formal. Livy and Ty are helping him get dressed, and he is wearing a fur coat, and that is all. Nudie nude, okay? Mark is like, what? Ty and Livy said this was okay. Julian and Emma at the same time are like, and you trusted them? They're 15-year-old little shits. Of course they were gonna make you walk out in this. Julian, who is still like in a daze because of Emma, he's like, oh, let's go. Come with me. And he drags Mark back upstairs. Everyone's cracking up because as Julian's like pulling him, Mark is like, am I over or underdressed? I don't understand. But luckily they still have Andrew Blackthorn's clothes. And so Julian just hands Mark one of his dad's old suits that fits him perfectly. And Mark can tell that Julian is really stressed. He's like biting his nails. So Mark asks him what's wrong, and Julian's of course just like, yeah, just stressed, you know, whatever. And Mark means this in kind of a nice way. He's like, hey, bud, like, what's there to be stressed about? Because Julian is so good at making things look effortless or hiding how hard he's working. So Mark just innocently doesn't get it. And Julian is like, Mark, do you know how Dad died? Because Mark wasn't there for it. When Julian explains what happened, Mark obviously is like, he takes a breath, you know, and he's like, it wasn't him, Julian. You know that, right? Julian's like, yeah, that's what everybody says. And Mark is like, no, but Julian, not everyone saw it happen, because Mark was there when Sebastian took over their dad's body, but Mark was just taken away by the demons before Julian had to kill his father. He said, I was there when Dad got turned. I saw the light in his eyes go out like a candle. He was dead inside. All you did was bury the body. And for a brief moment, Julian felt something like relief, something like a weight on his shoulders lift incrementally. So like step by step, we're healing each other, okay? But as they come down the stairs, Mark all of a sudden is like, am I hallucinating, or is the foyer filled with chihuahuas? And Ty is like, well, actually there are various breeds of small dogs. Apparently Uncle Arthur is very close friends with Nightshade, who is one of the head vampires of Los Angeles, the one who owns Vampire Pizza. And so since the kids are all going to be out, Nightshade is over hanging out at the house, and he brings his shit ton of dogs with him everywhere he goes. So yeah, he's got like 100 little Chihuahua-esque things. Okay? And on that note, they head to the party. They all wave goodbye to the small dogs and are on their merry way. Party, immediately weird. Who would have thunk? They thought it was going to be all mundanes, because most of the people who have turned up dead have been mundanes. So they find this golden ticket in the dead lady's purse, blah, 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 right? Most of these people seem to be supernatural in some way. There are fairies here, and Mark just like immediately dips. He's like, my people, and he goes away. Christina also tries to mingle because she is like, all of us standing here staring, we are clearly not blending in. So she kind of goes to look around as well. And Julian and Emma are like, okay, how do we look less weird? Let's dance, because everyone is dancing. There's like a party first, and then they're gonna go into the theater for this like lottery thing. Okay, so Julian and Emma are like, dancing. We can do this, right?
You want me to teach you how to slow dance?
It's a lot, okay? So remember, just this morning, Emma was unable to be in the kitchen with Julian without wanting to jump his bones. So dancing with him, what could go wrong? As usual. So they start dancing. Emma immediately, her mind goes to, what if I kissed him? And then she's like, what the fuck? Why would I kiss him? Kind of thing. So she's trying to like have an internal conversation, like try to calm herself down, but that's really hard to do when Julian's hand is moving down over her back to her waist, lightly cupping her hip. She's trying to communicate with him with their like writing language. Remember how they like write on each other's arm? He's ignoring her. She's like, hello, what are you doing? And he's just like grooving. Okay. And then he opens his mouth, and all of a sudden he's like, when you came down those stairs tonight, I was thinking about painting you, but I can't think of what paint would capture your hair. And at this point, they're like not dancing anymore. They're just like standing, looking at each other as Julian does his little monologue as usual. He's like, I need to tell you something. And he leans really close. And then a gong sounds. And they gotta go into the theater. Right after that, Tina finds them and is like, hey, ready to go. And Julian acts completely normal. He's like, yeah, where's Mark? Let's find him, blah, blah, blah. And Emma is standing there just like, she's always known Julian was a decent actor. Shadowhunters had to lie and play parts all the time, but it was as if she'd imagined the expression she'd seen on his face a second ago, as if she'd imagined the last 10 minutes, as if none of it happened at all. Meanwhile, where is Mark? He found Kieran. Remember how I was like, there are fairies in the crowd? Yeah, there is a fairy in the crowd, and his name is Kieran, and they are like having some separation issues, mainly Kieran. Mark is like, why are you here? And he's like, how else am I supposed to see you? I can't go to the institute. I can't blah, 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 blah. And Mark is like, we're not supposed to see each other. He's like, it's been 3 weeks. We got to figure out how to be apart. Kieran also mentions like, I saw you on the motorcycle with that girl. And Mark is very open about his feelings. And he's like, yeah, you know, I don't think that people can fall in love that quickly, but I certainly like her. But to him, it's just a crush because Christina is like Shadowhunter royalty. The Rosales family is legendary. And he's basically like, yeah, I'm just like this fairy mixed kid. No way she would ever think of me that way, right? And then Kieran's like, okay, enough talk about girls. And they just start making out in the coat check room. When Mark has to go into the theater, Kieran says, find the fucking killer and then come back to me, okay? Because remember, Mark gets a choice. He gets to choose if he goes back to Fairy or stay with the Shadowhunters.
Will you come to my cottage this summer?
Mark is like, Kieran, but my family, like, what do you mean? And Kieran just says, come back to me. He kisses Mark's hand and he fades into the crowd. The gang has taken their seats and Emma is still just like wigging out about Julian's whole like switch up. But Christina's also looking a little weird. What's up with her? When she went to mingle in the party, she's the only one who did what they were actually supposed to do, which is like use this as an opportunity to get clues. She ended up dancing with this creepy ass dude who was like very handsy with her. And she was like, honestly, if my mom was here, she would have told me to stab him. But instead, I got good information out of him. Basically, he was bragging about how he is level blue. Like, the more of these events you come to, the higher your level. So because this is their first time, they're like level white or whatever. And he's like, I'm a level blue. Christina's just very much like, you know, that was not fun for me. And he becomes very important in a second. Because remember, they're here for a lottery. A woman comes out on stage, gives a short little speech, pulls out this like lottery thingy, like bingo or whatever. And she pulls out a number. Blue 304. And our creepy half werewolf handsy guy that bothered Christina, he goes pale. Because when you're winning the lottery, you are actually being chosen as a sacrifice. You know the rules, says the lottery woman. Mr. Sterling has 2 days of freedom before the hunt begins. No one may help him. No one may interfere. So the gang is assuming all the people who have died, who have turned up dead, are lottery winners. Afterwards, Emma and Christina chase him outside of the theater to offer him help, to be like, dude, you're a sacrifice. What can we do? How can we help you? And he does not want it. He's like, yeah, get away from me, you little creeps. But Emma doesn't really take no for an answer. So she spends a significant amount of time convincing these kids to talk to Johnny Rook. She's like, listen, we've got names, we've got more information. Anybody knows more than we do, it's Johnny. Like, we've got to go talk to him. And Mark and Christina are sort of like, he's a criminal. I don't really know about this. And finally, Julian is like, no, Emma's right. We got to go talk to him. And so Emma is like, thank you, Julian. This is why I love you. And they're both just like, The word slipped out of her without thinking. Neither Christina or Mark seemed to notice, but Julian's cheeks turned a dull brick red. His hands tightened on the steering wheel. And these two idiots both think that they're alone in their feelings, right? They're both like, the other person can't love me like that. But you know who does notice? Tina, because Tina actually pays attention to this shit. Tina's sitting in the back seat of the car and she can't help but notice that Julian keeps glancing at the curve of Emma's neck as if he couldn't help it. And a cold fear weighed down in Christina's stomach. She felt as if she were watching trains hurtling towards each other on the same track with no way of stopping either one, because she also knows the rules about Parvati. And what does this look like to her? Two kids in love. And then, as if Tina isn't already dealing with enough, okay, she's been like groped on the dance floor. Now two of her best friends are like possibly going to be exiled and excommunicated. She drops an earring. They're getting out of the car. She drops an earring. Mark picks it up for her. And as he's handing it to her, he's like, I just need to tell you, you look exceptionally beautiful tonight, Christina. She says something of like, oh, you know, but like clearly you've got eyes for another or something. She like lets it slip that she saw him and Kieran. And he immediately goes from charming, happy-go-lucky to extremely serious. He's like, Christina, you cannot tell anyone. She's like, there are so many rules. We're going to get in so much trouble. Like, Kieran will be hurt. And Christina's like, calm down. Secret's safe with me. Sorry. Don't know why I even brought it up. And then because Mark says everything that comes through his head, he's like, thank you, Christina. You know, you are just so gracious. And I really meant what I said, that I think you're beautiful. And, you know, I certainly want you. And I'm sure that Kieran would. And Christina's like, would what? She says, I'm sorry, you want me? And Mark is like, well, yeah. Even though she gets kind of a buzz from that, remember, she has been tingling with desire. She's like, well, I don't I don't know how I feel about being wanted. That makes it sound like I'm a thing that you want to use. And aren't you gonna return to Fairy to be with Kieran? And Mark is like, honestly, yeah, I think I will. You know, I really owe Kieran so much. He saved my life. And I think Julian can handle things without me, but, you know, it wouldn't be fair if I didn't go back to Kieran. And Christina's like, that doesn't sound like love. That sounds like you owe him a debt. And Mark gets kind of melancholy and he just says, if there's one thing I've learned in this life, it's that neither the fair folk nor mortals know what love is. No one does. Next order of business, we gotta go see Johnny. So Julian and Emma head to Johnny Rook's house. Mark is staying with the kids. Christina has something to do. I don't know what she's doing. But we're leaving Mark alone with the kids and he is very frightened. He is like, what if they set themselves on fire? And Julian is like, you better fucking find a way to put them out. But he's also like, Livy and Ty are 15. Drew doesn't leave her room. We'll be okay. All right. So Julian and Emma head to Johnny. Johnny's not very helpful. He's basically like, you guys know everything that I do. No one knows who the Guardian is, right? There's the cult that's called the Followers and they follow the Guardian, okay? Nobody knows who he is. So Emma is arguing back and forth with Johnny. Julian is on his phone the whole damn time because Mark is texting him that he cannot find Ty, and he's freaking the fuck out. So the conversation hits a dead end. They're about to leave when they hear this massive crash coming from the basement. And this is crazy because houses in LA don't have basements. So Cassie, what's going on? Who is in the basement? We're going to switch POVs for a second because Kit is hiding there. Because remember, Johnny hates shadowhunters and he doesn't like them around his son because his son has the sight. So Kit is hiding in the basement and he's like eavesdropping because he's a 15-year-old boy. All of a sudden, this figure just busts out of the shadows and like slams him against the wall. He's got a knife to his neck and Kit is just like, oh no. But also, oh no, because who is holding him against the wall? The most beautiful boy Kit has ever seen.
This is crazy.
He's got cheekbones to die for. He's all dressed in black. He's moody. He's got a knife to his throat. Kit is sort of like, he could keep me here all day. I don't know what's going on, but okay. Until he notices all of the tattoos on this guy's arm. And he's like, oh, I'm supposed to be scared of shadowhunters, but I think I kind of like this one. And Kit is trying to say something. He's like, what are you doing? Hi, hello, what's up? And this person is like, you gotta shut up. You gotta be quiet. Shut up. When the basement door opens and Emma, Julian, and Johnny are standing at the top looking down and Julian just says, Tiberius Blackthorn, what are you doing? Yeah, Ty and Kit. Did I mention that? Kit is also going to be in the next series. Drew, Ty, Livy, and Kit are going to be, I believe Ty and Kit are going to be our main focus in the next series. So you might want to like pay attention. Keep that in mind. Okay, that's their little meet cute. Basically, Tiberius really wants to be on a mission. Remember, he's obsessed with Sherlock Holmes. He really believes that he has a lot to offer. Julian protects him like no other and doesn't invite him to anything. So he decided to follow along. He was like in the backseat the whole time. So he followed along and he kind of like broke into the basement. But this kind of works out because Johnny Rook, remember, is terrified of shadowhunters seeing his son. Now there's 3 shadowhunters, literally eyes locked on Kit. And so he's like, fuck it, I'll give you Sterling's address, okay? The guy who's gonna be the sacrifice. He's like, why don't you just follow him and maybe he'll lead you to some clues, okay? But get the fuck out of here, right? So Emma takes the address and she's looking at Kit and she just hates that Johnny keeps this kid hidden and locked up. So she makes it a point to be like, hey Johnny, if you ever need me, call me on your phone. I've plugged it in as Emma in front of Kit, sort of being like, if Kit ever needs to call me, he knows how to find my number. Clever, Emma, clever. With kind of half of a clue, they leave the house. Julian stays in the front yard to kind of clean up the runes that Ty drew to open the basement window. So Emma and Ty are alone in the car waiting for him. And Ty is like, Julian's mad at me, isn't he? And Emma's like, oh boy, he's gonna murder you. But she's kind of laughing. And when Julian gets in the car, the first thing he does is grab Ty into the fiercest hug. He's kind of shaky, like clearly Julian is terrified because he loves Ty so much. And so he just doesn't ever want Ty to be hurt. And I think Ty gets that. So while Julian is hugging him, Ty kind of like rubs his back and calms him down, and Julian lets him. Julian kind of like relaxes into the hug, and Emma is sort of watching this like, oh my God, I feel like this is the first time Julian's let anyone take care of him in any way. While this is a cute moment, it's also like, oh, our baby boy is at the end of his rope. Julian yells at him a little bit in the car on the drive home, but Emma is like, honestly, Julian, you and I would have done the exact same thing at the age of 15. We've done worse. And honestly, Ty's actions did get us Sterling's address. So good on you, Ty. And Ty is sort of arguing. He's like, listen, maybe if you let me out a little more and let me prove that I can do it, you'd worry about me less. So for now, they call a truce and everything is peaceful until they reach the Institute. And remember, Mark has been alone with the kids. And at this point, only 3 kids. They walk into the kitchen and it looks like it has exploded. We get a really long scene, okay, where essentially Julian loses his shit, okay? Everything is like 2 steps forward, 1 step back with him. He's just, like we said, at the end of his rope, and now he has to clean this goddamn kitchen because Mark, I don't even remember, I'm pretty sure Tabby is like sitting in a bag of sugar.
I'm so sorry.
Liar.
Okay, it's not good. It's not good. And Julian loses it. He's yelling at everybody and nobody's mad at Julian because they can tell that like this isn't him actually being angry with them. This is him being really, really tired. So they're more just concerned with him when suddenly Emma gets a text that someone's at the convergence line. Remember at the cave that they found, Diana helped them set up like a tracking system. If anybody went in and out, it would either call or text them. The system worked. Emma's looking at Julian like, I don't think he's in a good place to be going out on another adventure. I'm gonna leave him home. And she basically just tells Tina like, I'm heading out. And like a dummy, she goes there alone. She actually tells Christina to give Julian a note because of course Julian would notice Emma's absence and would be like, where the fuck is she? She like scribbles a little note for Julian basically saying that she's gonna go meet Cameron. And this girl is unaware of how moody and jealous Julian is right now. So that like sets him off. He keeps a poker face, but he's going through it thinking that she's gonna go visit her ex. Also, just like a few pages ago, we had this tiny scene where Emma and Mark were talking in his room. She was like returning something of his and they kind of sat down on the bed and they were talking about Emma's parents because remember, Mark was like always really close with Emma just as a friend. So they were kind of bonding, catching up, and Julian walks in and is like in his head. He's like, are you guys making out? He's really convinced for some reason that Emma and Mark are starting something up. Meanwhile, Mark has a crush on everyone except for Emma. Julian's having a shit time right now, and Emma just made it a lot shittier. We are now 60% of the way through the book, and this is where Cassandra Clare starts her chaotic writing in which we switch POVs every couple of pages. So please bear with me. Also, everyone has their own drama, so just buckle up, okay? What's going on? Number 1, Emma goes to the cave all by herself just as the sun is setting. And demons love to come out at night. So how do we think that's gonna go? Number 2, Christina actually heads to Sterling's house. She gets the address that they got from Johnny. She heads over there to just once again be like, dude, we'd love to help you. Don't know why you don't want our help. You're a sacrifice. And he like runs away. Weirder though is when she gets back to the car, she notices she missed a call from Diego, who is once again her first love. Mysterious circumstances surround him and she has to like talk herself down from calling him back. Okay. Number 3, Julian heads up to the attic to talk to Uncle Arthur, because remember, Uncle Arthur is obsessed with, yes, mainly Greek and Roman classics, but like literature in general. And Livy noticed that there was that poem, the Edgar Allan Poe poem, written on the cave. So he was like, why don't we talk to Uncle Arthur? And they've been keeping him pretty up to date with all the clues that they've found. So even he is like, yeah, actually, there is something weird going on. And he's like going through the poem and he keeps getting pulled to this one line that says, of those who were older than we. And he's like, I just can't, something about that is sticking in my brain. And Julian is like, oh my God, Uncle Arthur actually helped us with something, because at the lottery, the cult did kind of like a prayer before the lottery, and they mentioned, may those who are older grant us good fortune. And even though that's not exact, it's weird that those 2 lines sound so similar. And he's like, okay, that's a pretty solid connection with the cult, these sacrifices, and the cave. Okay. So he's like, thank you, Uncle, for once. Then Christina gets home. Everybody is asleep or out of the house, except for Mark, who is sitting at the kitchen table with Tavi asleep in his arms. He's basically like, I can't move. So they end up talking, and it turns into another one of Christina's therapy sessions. She is truly the therapist for the entire Blackthorn family, and Mark is sort of complaining again that like Julian isn't trusting him, and especially with that whole like kitchen blow up, right? He was really upset at Mark for how he took care of the kids, and Christina was like, honestly, Mark, I think he's jealous of you. She says Julian has never been able to be just the goofy older brother. He's had to be the dad. He's never able to be kind of who he wants to be with the kids. And the fact that Mark can just roll up and be like, the fact that Livy and Ty played a prank on him with the whole like semi-formal attire, they would never pull that shit with Julian. Not because Julian isn't fun, but because Julian is like a father figure, very serious. When he could, if he didn't have all these responsibilities on his back, be goofy. So I think he was really upset that everyone was kind of like giggling, laughing at like Mark's failure to take care of the kids, when Julian is like, if I failed to take care of the kids, the world would fall apart, right? And Mark is blown away by the idea that Julian could be jealous of him. And then weirdly, the conversation turns back to Ferry and his really rough time there. And he mentions that he used to get teased a lot. Like Kieran is the only one who helped him. Other than that, he got teased, especially because there's apparently this like common fairy rhyme that centers on the Blackthorn family. They basically tease him with, first the flame, then the flood, in the end it's Blackthorn blood. And then because Christina is the only one with brain turned on, investigation first, okay? She has boy drama and yet she's still able to think of the investigation. We love her. She's like, wait, say that again? First the flame, then the flood? Doesn't that sound a lot like from fire to water? That one piece of the language that was translated? She's basically like, it's not the same, but when English is your second language, you tend to like pick up on kind of the more broader meanings of the words rather than being like really committed to like water and flood. You wouldn't always connect those, but she did. Bilingual queen. And Mark is impressed. He's like, oh my God, she's beautiful. And she's smart.
There's a typo in this crossword puzzle.
He's like, you are so cool, but I know nothing about you. Like, could you tell me anything about this wonderful girl called Christina? He says, I know something made you leave Mexico. What was it? It wasn't something. It was someone, she said. Apparently, Diego and Jaime, I'm going to say Jaime. They were brothers. So remember, Diego, first love, Jaime, best friend. One I was in love with, one was my best friend, but they both broke my heart. And Mark is like, I'm so sorry to hear that, but also I'm really glad it brought you here. Because remember, he's like, you're the only one who I didn't have a previous relationship with. Like, we can just start here. And I don't feel any pressure to be anything. He says, I don't feel like you're something I've lost, but rather gained. He gives her this kind of like loving handshake. And they are so intent on staring into each other's eyes that they don't notice the flash of a pale face looking in the window, or the sound of an acorn being viciously crushed between narrow fingers. So we're assuming Kieran was watching them and saw them have this like loving moment, and he's pissed. What is Emma doing? Emma's getting in trouble. As we know, she walks into the cave and it's kind of the same, except now there's a table. There's like candles and she's drawn to those big glass portholes again. She's kind of snooping around because she didn't look at them last time. She gets a little bit closer and has the grand idea to open one because they're clearly like doors. Girl pulls them open and hears a horrible noise. On the other side of the room, the other portal swings open. And it's just a swirling wall of ocean water. Before she can react, she finds herself lifted off her feet and dragged towards the ocean as if she were being sucked down a drain. She only had time to scream once before she was hauled through the doorway and water closed over her head. Great. Meanwhile, Julian is in his art studio having a mental breakdown, as he always is. He's basically thinking about what Cameron and Emma are doing right now. When he starts to choke, he feels like he's being stabbed and he can't breathe. He's gasping, his eyes burn, his Parabatai rune is burning, and he realizes there's salt water in his mouth. And he immediately knows. He knew without knowing how he knew. He knew it down to his soul, where his connection to Emma had been forged. Emma, he whispered, and took off at a run. So remember, Parabatai share emotions, share pain. If one gets stabbed, the other one kind of feels it. Emma is drowning, so is Julian. And so he just runs to the ocean. He's like, I'm gonna find her, biggest ocean in the world, but I can find her. Now, if you guys are thinking of getting up or stopping this video at this exact moment, I need you to reconsider, because what is about to happen, I made an entire separate video about this because this scene lives rent-free in my head, because I cannot believe this happens, and Cassandra Clare is insane. And just hold on for another 5 minutes, okay? That's all I need from you, because we have a flashback to 2009. It is 3 years ago. We are in Idris, and we are performing the Parbatai ceremony for Julian and Emma. Clary and Jace are there, and Jace is kind of joking with Julian. Like, they don't really have a good relationship, okay? They're both too moody. So Jace is trying to be like, oh, like, after this, you're gonna have such a fun time with Emma's boyfriends because nobody's ever gonna feel good enough for her. I bet they're gonna be so scared of you, man. Like, Jace is trying to be really jokey about it, and Julian is like, Emma having boyfriends. Emma is lurking somewhere, and she sees Jace and Clary talking, and she sees how Jace is looking at Clary. And Emma's just like, I wonder if anyone will ever look at me like that. It didn't seem possible. She couldn't imagine loving anyone that much. Anyone but Jules. So we're in deep shit. They're about to tie themselves together, and both of them are like, wow, I can only imagine myself falling in love with one person, and now we're gonna do a ceremony where we can't fall in love. What could go wrong? Yeah. Oh, great. Emma's kind of aloof. She doesn't really realize what's going on, but Julian is aware. He is aware that he is making the biggest mistake of his life. So cool. All right. We also get like a split second with brother Zachariah, who you will know from the Mortal Instruments. And he's basically like, hey, Emma, I'm your only living relative, but I've got shit to do. So here, take my cat and I will come see you when I'm done. So brother Zachariah is floating around somewhere. Okay. Just keep him in mind. Now to the present. Okay. Here's where I need you to stay, please. After darkness, there was light. Emma opens her eyes and she's like floating over the water, and she's like in a lot of pain, so she's trying to like twist to get comfortable, and she realizes she's not flying, she's being carried. She's being held against a hard chest, and the arms that were around her were Julian's. He is running through shallow water. They collapse onto the beach. He is like giving her CPR, getting all of the ocean water out of her lungs because she swallowed a hell of a lot of it. And they're both choking, by the way. Like, Julian is also still drowning. So they're both like coughing and choking, and she's trying to tell him like, I'm okay, but she's still low-key drowning, and it's very chaotic. But luckily Julian draws some kind of rune and is able to get all of the water expelled from her. And then he just starts yelling at her. She realizes that he's not shaking from the cold, but rage. He's basically like, why the fuck did you go there alone? And Emma's like, I'm trying to protect you. I didn't think you were in the right headspace to go. And Julian is like, okay, yeah, well, I just drowned inside the Institute. He's like, I just almost drowned on land. Emma is like, ooh, sorry, didn't know that was possible. And Julian's like, of course it's possible. Do we not know how the Parvati thing works? He screams, we are bound together, Emma. I breathe when you breathe. I bleed when you bleed. I'm yours and you're mine. You've always been mine, and I've always belonged to you. This is normally when he shuts the fuck up and like puts a big emotional wall up, but nothing is stopping this train, okay? And Emma sees it. She sees the panic, the desperation, the relief. He's still holding her, and she doesn't know if she leaned into him first or if he pulled towards her. Maybe both. They crash together like stars colliding, and then he is kissing her. And so help me God, they have sex on the beach. They go from having never touched, never spoken about their emotions before, drowning, okay, to having sex on the beach. But this is a young adult novel, so they actually don't. The language is so vague, and Cassie Clare actually had to release the R-rated or unedited version on her Tumblr. I was like not sure if I read this correctly. Let's just go through it. Okay, let's just go through it, right? So in my notes, the one thing that I'm mainly focused on is that there was a lot of wet sand involved, and that just doesn't sound good. They're also wearing jeans, so wet jeans and sand. To the last moment of her life, Emma thought, she would recall the way he buried his face against her neck and said her name over and over, as if every other word had been forgotten forever in the depths of the ocean. To the last hour, she would. And hold on to your butts, people, because it gets more diabolical. Okay, they do the deed. They're laying together. He's like spread out his flannel jacket, and they're just looking at each other. Emma is like, oh my God, I love this boy so much. I feel my chest cracking open. And she wants to say it. She wants to say, Julian Blackthorne, I love you. But instead, the words that come out are, was that your first kiss?
This is crazy.
Your first kiss? Julian Blackthorne? Spoiler, it is. Emma's like, yeah, it wasn't that bad. Julian is basically like, yeah, Emma, that was my first everything. So thanks, I guess. They end up falling asleep, not clothed, on the beach in LA. And Julian is freaking out. Julian's freaking out because, number one, there are footprints in the sand. When he wakes up, it's like a couple hours later. Footprints in the sand near them. So like someone saw them. So that's not good. They are like quickly getting dressed. And number two reason to freak out is because he didn't use protection. Unlike our hero Jace, who remembers to pack condoms regardless of what dimension he is. Jace famously bringing a condom into one of the circles of hell so that he could woo Clary. Anyway, Julian didn't have that forethought because, again, that was his first kiss, right? And but don't you worry, because Clary, one of her amazing skills, remember, she makes runes that don't exist. She has the power to create new runes for some reason. Within the past 3 years, Clary created a birth control rune, and Emma has one. So she's like, it's okay, I'm on the pill, basically. And then Julian just starts saying sorry. He's just apologizing profusely. He's like, we cannot do that again. We came way too close to breaking the law, the Parabatai law. And Emma's like, pretty sure we broke the law, bud. Pretty sure that's a big no-no what we just did. And Julian's like, no. That was just like a friend thing. We had sex as friends, but it wasn't like romantic love. And Emma's like, oh, that's what it was? Julian's like, yeah, I mean, you're hot, obviously. So I was attracted to you physically, but like, I can't risk falling in love with you. We can't do that again. Emma is like, falling in love? We haven't you didn't fall? Okay. She says, didn't I tell you last night? She said, I thought I was going to explode with how much I love you, Julian. And Julian's like, no, definitely didn't say those words. So it doesn't count. And she replays the whole night and she's like, fuck, I didn't say it out loud. And Julian is trying to be so nonchalant. He's like, yeah, one-time thing. Thank God for Clary and her birth control runes. That was a mistake. Adrenaline, man, it's a crazy drug, right? But on the other hand, Emma has never seen him look so sad. But she just mumbles like, oh, yeah, I guess you're right. Let's go home. And they head back to the Institute. Back at the Institute, we have a weird run-in with Diana, who kind of hasn't been on the page in a while. She's clearly working the investigation in a way that she can't tell the kids about, but like she's not doing nothing. But we don't really get any information from her. Who we do get information from is Mark and the twins. Sure enough, Christina's hunch about that fairy rhyme turned out to be really helpful because they managed to translate a little bit more of what was written on the bodies. And sure enough, it's basically that fairy rhyme. And that's a little concerning that the Blackthorne name is being written on all of these dead bodies. So they're going to keep working on that. Meanwhile, I didn't mention this, but we do have like a tracker on Sterling. And so we're kind of watching where he is, and he's on the move. So Emma and Christina decide to go follow him, specifically Emma and Christina, because Emma is not going anywhere with Julian right now. She is putting some big distance between them. They have obviously not spoken since they got back from the beach. As she's walking out with Christina, she tells herself like, don't turn around, but she does. And what she sees is Julian staring back at her, looking just like how she feels, hollow and bled dry. The look on his face almost undid her. It wasn't that she was walking away from the boy she loved with 1,000 words left unsaid. It was that she was terrified that a rift had opened between her and the person who had been her best friend as long as she could remember. And from the look of it, Julian was afraid of the same thing. Then we're in the car. Tina's driving. Emma is not there. Emma's spacing out. Tina has apparently been talking to her for like 3 minutes, and finally she's just like, and then there were giant bunny rabbits. Emma's like, what? Rabbits? And Christina's like, girl, I've been talking to you for a while. What is going on? And before she can stop herself, she's just like, I slept with Julian last night. Apparently, Christina looks as if, quote, Emma announced there was a grenade strapped to the roof of the car and it is about to explode. Not good. Christina is like, oh shit. She's like, this is actually horrible. I'm so sorry for you. And Emma's like, no, it's okay. It's okay because like I love Julian, unfortunately, but Julian doesn't have those kinds of feelings towards me. And Christina's like, oh girl. But they've got a half werewolf to go track down. So Emma's like, anyway, it's fine. Let's get back to business. You know, people survive broken hearts. And Christina's like, yeah, but there's a difference between having your heart broken and your soul shattered. And if you want to talk about broken hearts, they find Sterling, try to get him to see reason again. He wants no part in this. He runs off. As they're chasing him, they run into another figure, and Emma immediately recognizes him as the guy who was shooting the poison arrows at Julian, even with a mask. She's like, that guy, okay? Tackles him. She's like on top of him, rips off his mask, Scooby-Doo style, and Christina's like, oh my God. Dios mío. Emma, meet perfect Diego. Then we get the quickest scene. Again, this is the part of the book where we're jumping POVs and there's a lot of drama. Basically, Julian runs into Diana again and he's like, can you give us anything? Like, what are you even doing? Like, you're just running around. And Diana is like, listen, it's for your best interest. I can't tell you, but like, I'm on your side. You're doing great, honey. And Julian is just really irritable. I mean, his world has just collapsed, basically. And he's already collapsing under the pressure of being the responsible adult. So then he just starts yelling at Diana. He's basically like, you'd better have your shit together because I looked into your past. He essentially did like a background check on her to make sure that she was good enough to be a tutor for his siblings. And he alludes to this weird moment in Diana's life where she took this trip to Thailand with her brother, but her brother never came back because he mysteriously died over there. And Julian seems to be like threatening her with this information. And Diana is just like, fuck you, Julian. She doesn't actually say that because she's a good person, but she's essentially just like, wow, that's horrible that you would pull that on me. She gets into her truck and drives away, promising like, I'm still on your side, but goddamn. Julian is just so tired and out of it that he kind of just stands in the driveway of the Institute for a while after she's driven away. And when he finally kind of comes back to himself, he realizes that a crowd of people are walking up the long driveway to the Institute. Now let's flash back to Perfect Diego. Perfect Diego is also investigating this case. We will find out more about that later. Why did he shoot Julian? Because he was like, I don't know, you guys showed up and were looking sketchy and you weren't dressed like shadowhunters, so I shot you. I think that's a weak ass excuse. You don't just like shoot willy-nilly, but again, the police. But he's like, but enough of that. We got to get to the shadow market because I know Sterling has an appointment there and we can corner him there. And Christina and Emma are like, oh, great. Like, we're trying to protect him. He keeps running away. Like, let's go. Thinking Diego is also protecting Sterling. Wrong. He's like, protecting Sterling? Why are we protecting a murderer? And they're like, huh? He's a sacrifice. He's going to be hunted. And Diego's like, you dumb girls. He's about to explain when they're interrupted by a scream. Just down the road, they like all run towards the noise. Sterling is in the center of the road with a knife to the neck of this girl with like green hair. And before they can do anything, he just stabs her in the chest. All of a sudden, they like erupt into blue flames. And through the flames, Emma can notice like she sees the inside of the cave because she's been there more than once, right? She recognizes it. Through the blue flames, these like creepy ass bony hands come out and pull the girl who is dead, pulls the girl into the cave. The flames go away and Sterling turns to them smiling. Too late, girls. She was the 13th, the last of them. It turns out if your number is called in the lottery, you either kill or be killed. Basically, Sterling chose to kill, but somehow Diego manages to knock him unconscious. They get him in the car and they're going to drive him back to the Institute to interrogate him, find out what the fuck? And Diego, why are you here? Because Diego is a centurion. He went to the Scholomance. He's like a warrior scholar or whatever the fuck. And he is in charge of this case, okay, or one of the people in charge of this case, hence why he's getting involved, okay? At one point, Sterling wakes up and he's like trying to grab the steering wheel and like get the car off the road. He starts screaming about like, I need to go, I need to get out, I don't want to die on Pacific Coast Highway. And Emma is like, I'm sorry. Is there another highway you would like to die on? Shut up. Apparently, the rumor is if you kill someone in the lottery, you are given whatever you want. If you want to be beautiful, if you want to be powerful, blah, 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 blah. But funny enough, nobody's actually ever seen any of the winners of the lottery after they've won. And Sterling is like, it's probably because they're off being happy because they're rich and beautiful. And Emma's like, really? Because what about that one girl? Because the girl that they found in the pool, they have now discovered is a winner of the lottery. And Sterling is like, honestly, she probably couldn't handle it. She probably got so rich and did shitty things and killed herself. And Emma is like, okay, that definitely looked like a murder, but whatever gets you to sleep at night. But we don't get any more out of Sterling in his like semi-delirious state because we pull up to the Institute and remember, we had just left Julian in the driveway where a crowd was forming around him. What's that about? Basically, the crowd is like a weird jumble of shadowy figures at first. You can't really see them. They just look kind of like mush. And when the headlights finally hit a couple of them, Emma recognizes some of them from the cult party. Even there's a woman named Belinda. Belinda is the woman who was like running the lottery, like pulling the numbers. So she's like, oh, the Institute is surrounded by the cult. And then it's as if the car gets in an accident. Emma is thrown against the steering wheel. Everyone is screaming. She crawls out of the car. Diego is pulling Christina out of the car and her leg is bent at this really horrible angle. And Sterling is gone. Sterling is running towards Belinda being like, save me, I've been captured. And what is that shiny thing in his hand that he's running away with? The Cortana, Emma's sword. Emma is like, fuck no, and bolts after him. When she ends up getting the sword back, she is so pissed that she does this like circle thing with her sword. I don't know. It's like some magical move that only Emma can do and basically like cuts everyone in like her circumference. She's like, get the fuck away from me, you freaky ass cult people, and everybody's bleeding. No one is dead, but they're in pain, okay? And she is like, yeah, we might be outnumbered, but we are not outmatched. Battle ensues. And even though Emma is very skilled, they are low-key losing the battle. There are a shit ton of these creepy cult members when someone steps out of the Institute. Julian, his weapons shining in the moonlight. Emma felt this like fierce wave of pride and everyone is gagged that Julian is here. Julian starts firing his crossbow. Things are starting to look up when Malcolm Fade pops up as well. And Malcolm is basically like, you guys have got like 30 seconds before I set everybody on fire, so get going. And wouldn't you know it, the cult members flee. The cult members are like, ooh, warlock, let's get out of here. Not before Belinda does something weird to Sterling and he dies. She like zaps him with something and he's dead. So she cuts off both of his hands and then is like, bye, little shadowhunters, and hightails it out of there. So that's weird. Maybe that will come back to us later, but let's get Christina into the hospital wing because remember, she just like broke her leg or something like that. We get to learn a little bit more about Diego because they have a bit of private time and Diego is just as confused as we are about why Christina left Mexico. And here is the story. As we know, perfect Diego, her first love. Jaime, his brother, someone who is going to become Christina's parabatai, okay? Her best friend. And apparently she overheard them one night and Jaime was talking about how his plan is working. He was going to become Christina's parabatai. Diego was going to marry Christina and then they would use that to basically take the Institute back. Like we said, Christina's family is sort of Shadowhunter royalty, but their family as well, Perfect Diego, they're also pretty renowned. Fun fact, they actually both share the last name Rosales, but they're two totally different Rosales people. Anyway, so Jaime was like, we're gonna take back the Institute. Like our family, our Rosales family deserves to run the Mexico City Institute. Christina is not happy to hear that. Christina does not like to be a pawn in anyone's game. So she runs off. And Diego is like, okay, I hear you. That sounds bad. That sounds bad. But did you hear me say anything? Like Jaime was drunk. Did you hear me agreeing with him? Did you hear me say, great idea, bud? No. And Christina's like, oh, what? Like you didn't like your brother? You think your brother's not a good guy? And Diego's like, yeah. He says, I feel like he's missing a piece of his heart. where compassion is supposed to live. And Christina's like, that doesn't make any sense, because why did you let me get close enough to him to become his parabatai? Like, he was my best friend. And Diego said that that night, Jaime was going to go to Idris, right? To like prepare for the ceremony. And that was going to be one of the first times that Diego and Jaime were separated. So he could speak privately to Christina and basically tell her, like, we got to run away. Basically expose Jaime for being kind of a sociopath. Christina ran away before he could do that. Or that's at least the story he tells us. Diego says, I wanted to leave with you. I've loved you since we were 10. And Christina's like, no, too little, too late, bud. Apology not accepted. Anyway, I'm over it. I'm over it. I'm over us. She's not over it. She's not over us. Okay. But he needs to help with the investigation. So Perfect Diego is here to stay. And he's not useless. He actually has genuinely been investigating this. He has more information than we do, including he actually spoke to the woman that we found in the pool. He spoke to her while she was alive and was able to get a lot of information out of her. He was sort of like, yeah, I introduced myself, and for some reason she seemed really into speaking to me. And Emma was like, have you looked in the mirror? She's like, that face, I would tell you all my secrets. You are H-O-T. But basically we have learned that, yep, Malcolm was correct. This is a summoning spell. And it's not just any summoning spell. It is a spell to bring back someone from the dead. And Ty is like, who would do that? You start an entire cult just to bring one person back? And Drew was like, I'd do it. Wouldn't you, Julian? Like, imagine if Emma died. Wouldn't you try and bring her back? And Julian looks sick to his stomach at the thought of it. And luckily, Tavi, our MVP, saves him from any awkward confessions and conversations that could lead to. He's like, guys, I found a clue. And if there's one thing you need to know about the Blackthorn family, is that all of them love to read. And we love them for it. Tavi in particular really likes his collection of Shadowhunter folk tales, kind of like fairy tales and fables. Everyone really knows them, but Tavi remembers them because he's read them recently, right? And here it is. He finds one particularly terrifying story in the Shadowhunter book about Lady Midnight, a Shadowhunter who fell in love with someone she wasn't supposed to. She died of sadness, and so the man who loved her went to the King of the Fairies asking to bring her back. And in this, there is the rhyme that Mark brought up, right? First the flame and then the flood. In the end, it's Blackthorn blood. But it continues. Seek thou to forget what's past, first 13 and then the last. Search not the book of angels gray, red or white will leave you far astray. To regain what you have lost, find the black book at any cost. And you know what's really weird about Lady Midnight? Lady Midnight was a Blackthorn. Luckily, Diego is like, that's a great clue. There's actually a lot I can work with here. So he mentions that the Shadowhunters have a lot of books. We've heard of the Gray Book before, I think. Diego's like, the Black Book. I think I've heard of that at the Skolamons. So he runs off. He's like, I'm going to go follow that lead. And everyone kind of scatters. Emma just sort of finds herself on the porch, like trying to get her thoughts together, when she is joined by Julian, and they finally sit down and talk. We're not going to talk about what happened on the beach, though, because that would be what mature adults do. No, we're going to talk about Uncle Arthur, because when the cult was attacking the Institute, it was very obvious that Arthur was not helping. Why didn't Arthur come down and help defend the Institute and just like leave all of these kids to fight? Julian comes clean and how Julian has been running this Institute basically since he was 12 years old. And weirdly, Emma's reaction is anger. She's like, why couldn't you have trusted anyone? But like, especially me, like we could have worked together. I could have helped you. But Julian was like, I couldn't tell you because I just felt so selfish. And Emma was like, that's probably the most selfless thing you've ever done, right? Because they were gonna split up the family. How could they let a 12-year-old raise his siblings if the Clave had found out that Arthur wasn't fit to be a guardian, right? Emma was like, no, that sounds pretty selfless to me. And he's like, no, it's the most selfish thing I've ever done. He was like, I did all of this, Emma, just to keep you near. That's why I even went through the Parvati thing. It was like, I knew it was a bad idea because I knew. And Emma's like, what did you know, Jules? What did you know? What's the difference? He said. It won't change anything. And Emma's like, nah, pretty sure it would change something for me if I knew. Julian's basically like, Emma, we can't talk about this. Why don't you go inside? And Emma's like, why don't you go inside? If you want to walk away, you have to be the one to do it. I can't, he said, his voice low and broken. She inhaled the breath of cold air, and then his mouth was on hers. And for the past day or so, she's been wondering if what happened between them on the beach was just a fluke. Not a fluke. Not a fluke. But because we never have a moment of peace in this house, their little porch makeout session is interrupted because there's like a poof, and all of a sudden there are 3 fairies standing on their doorstep. We recognize Kieran, we recognize Irla, and the third one is none other than Gwen, the leader of the Wild Hunt himself. And he looks pissed. So, as if Emma and Julian don't already have enough on their plate, we've got beef with the fairies now. Okay, more beef than usual. Because if we remember, Mark and Christina were having like a cute little heart-to-heart that looked a little romantic, and Kieran saw from the window, and we know that Kieran is like a jealous little prick. So Kieran decided to tell Gwen, the leader of the hunt, that Mark was sharing fairy secrets and needs to come home right now. And Mark comes out, hears all of this, and he's basically like, what the fuck, Kieran? He's like, this is between me and you. This is a matter of the heart. Since when does the court interfere with that? And Emma is like, matters of the holy shit. How did I miss that? How did I miss that? But Kieran is like, no, this is bigger than us. You're sharing fairy secrets. You need to come home right now. And Irla is like, babe, that's not the punishment. Kieran's like, what? Because Kieran just thought this was a tricky way to get Mark back to Fairy. Because remember, Mark was sort of like, maybe I won't go back to Fairy, you know? Kieran thought that this was going to guarantee him a quick trip back. Maybe he'd get a slap on the wrist, but like he's going to be back with Kieran. No. Irla's like, sharing fairy secrets, that's 20 whiplashes, which no one can survive. You die before the whip hits 20. Okay? Kieran goes pale. Everyone else goes silent. Julian flips the fuck out. He's basically like, if you touch my brother, I will kill you. And Gwen is like, I'm the leader of the Wild Hunt. And Julian is like, and? What about it? Irla gets out his whip. Kieran is now like on his knees begging to be whipped instead of Mark. But remember, Kieran's a fairy prince. And so Irla's like, no, if I hurt you, I'll get in more trouble. So why would I do that? Kieran gets up and just says, please. But he's not looking at Irla. He's looking at Mark. Mark gave him a look so full of searing hate that even Emma recoiled. And Kieran looked, if possible, even sicker. So Mark approaches the tree that Irla tells him to like hold on to while he gets whipped, when Julian steps forward. Take me instead. And Kieran is like, I like that idea. Whip him, not my boyfriend. And after that, things happen very quickly. Mark throws himself on Kieran. He's like, you can fuck with me, but you fuck with my brother, dead to me. Okay, so they're like tussling on the ground. Emma tries to get in there too, but Gwen like throws her, pulls the fairies apart from each other. And Mark is basically like, you are my sworn enemy now, just so you know. Mark is begging Jules to take it back, but he just gives his brother a slow, sweet smile. It was a smile that was all love. It was from a little boy who lost his brother and against all odds had gotten him back. Julian is like, you're not taking my brother and you're not touching a hair on his head. I protect the family. But sometimes love is blind, and Julian did forget one of the key rules that ironically he's been yelling about this whole book, that basically Parvati share pain. So when the first whip came down, Emma saw it bite into Julian's skin and pain exploded inside of her. Mark is trying to be like, hello, can you not see that you're getting 2 for 1? Like, please stop this. You're hurting Emma as well. And even Kieran is like, Irla, you gotta stop. You don't understand what you're doing. Until finally Gwen tells the fairy to stop. They whipped Julian twice. Emma takes this hesitation as an opportunity to run to Julian. She puts a unconscious rune on him, basically puts Julian in a coma. And then Emma just starts yelling about how when she was 12, she killed a fairy in the war and she's not mad about it. Because if she said like, oh, whip me instead, she has no connection really to Mark. Like they agreed to whip Julian in Mark's stead because that's his brother. But in their like weird mental math, Emma's nobody. But they decide, ooh, she's like happy about killing fairies. Yeah, we can whip this girl. So she takes the punishment. After the whip came down for the 7th time, she barely felt the sting, and darkness swallowed her whole. So the only good thing that comes out of this torture session is they bring Emma back to the hospital wing. Basically, she is still unconscious, and Julian is sitting there, not angry at Mark, but like very quiet, which is arguably scarier. And they've given her the sleeping runes, the healing runes, all of that. So they're just kind of like waiting for her to heal and wake up. But Mark makes Julian a very important promise. He says, no matter what happens, I will stay here. I'll always stay here. He gives Julian a hug, promising that he will never go back to Fairy. And Julian just kind of lets it all out. He feels like he's letting go of something heavy that he's been carrying for 5 years. And leaning on Mark's shoulder, he let his older brother bear just a little of the weight. Meanwhile, Emma, in her coma, is dreaming of her parents. And like interspersed throughout this dream, we can hear like every single Blackthorn come in and beg her to wake up. You'll hear Mark be like, Emma, wake up. And you'll hear Livy being like, girl, get up. Ty is like, Emma, it's time for dinner, you know? And of course, the voice she loves most in the world, begging her to come back. But in the dream, we get this vision where her father is like, trust Jem Carstairs, who, as we know, is brother Zachariah. And Dream Emma is like, yeah, I trust him, but he had to go do something. Remember, he was kind of like, here, take my cat. I'll come back to you when I'm done, you know? And her dad says, he's about to find what he's looking for, and he'll need your help. And just remember, Emma, as long as there is love and memory, there is no true death. When Emma finally wakes up, we get this teary reunion with Julian. Julian is like, why on earth did you do that? And Emma is basically like, listen, Mark would not have mentally survived watching you get whipped, and I certainly couldn't watch either of you get whipped. And she's also like, and Julian, think of the kids, right? Like in the family, Emma is the girl that jumps off of roofs and walks on broken glass and is always bleeding somewhere. It's okay if I get hurt, but you think of how much that would affect Ty, like seeing his father figure that injured. We couldn't do it to them. They're my family too, Julian, okay? And Julian's like, I know they are. Like I've always kind of wished that we were just married and they were our kids, you know? And Emma's like, married? What? And Julian is like, why do you do that? Why do you always act like you love me more than I love you? And Emma is like, babe, maybe it's because you've like said it, right? Like I was the one standing on the beach being like,
I love you, Julian Blackthorn.
And you were like, oh, but it's just a friend thing. So now you're saying we should get married. Boy. So he's like, you know what? Fine. I'm going to show you something. And he like picks her up princess style. He puts on like a new healing rune and then some kind of potion that Malcolm made to make her heal faster, picks her up and brings her to his studio. Meanwhile, Emma is like, are you going to show me like a freezer full of dead bodies? Like you're acting really weird. And when he drops her at the door of his studio, he looks really pale and scared. And she's like, oh my God, does he really have dead bodies in there? Because he's never looked like this before. And he lets her in to the studio he keeps locked. For a moment, she thought she'd stepped into a funhouse of mirrors. Reflections of herself stared back at her from every surface. We're talking paintings, we're talking sketches, we're talking doodles. Emma. This is the Emma room, okay? Emma, who Julian never paints. After a very long, awkward silence, Emma is like, huh. So you like my hair down, it seems. Because all of the paintings, her hair is like luscious. Julian is like, that's what you, okay. And Emma is like, why have you not shown anybody these? These are beautiful. They're amazing. And Julian is like, look at them, girl. Anyone who looks at these would know how I feel about you. And how long has he been drawing Emma? His whole life. Now the studio is locked for a different reason because they just like pounce on each other. There's paint everywhere. It's always something. Is it sand? Is it paint? Anyway, and apparently this is why Julian requested that the family go to England. He was like, I needed to get away from you and see if like this was a cloud I could clear from my head. No. And also the reason he's been so fucking weird about Mark is that apparently when Emma was 12, she mentioned that she had a crush on Mark because Mark is like a crushable person, right? And when she like teasingly mentioned that to Julian, that was the first time Julian ever felt jealousy, like deep in his bones. Just the thought of Emma and Mark ever getting together, he said, I don't think I could ever come back from that. They continue to make out be teenagers in love when this series, Isabel, comes marching in. It's Livy. She's like, Julian, we're looking for you. Come on out. We also get a scene that is very important later. Okay, so Julian goes off with Livy. Emma sneaks into her room and there's a knock on the door and it's Mark. And Mark is basically like, Emma, I owe you my life. I'm sad that you got hurt, but like I couldn't have watched that happen to Julian. And I think you know that. And so I owe you a favor no matter what it is. Anything. And Emma's like, whoa, that's intense. And he's like, no, I'm a fairy. A deal is a deal. I will owe you anything you ask for. So maybe remember that for later, okay? But let's get back to the babies of the family who are solving all of this themselves, right? What are the elder siblings doing? Literally, like, come on. Anyway, so Livy, Ty, Drew, Tavi, they took the knowledge of the poem in the cave plus the Shadowhunter folktale about the Blackthorn blood, and they combed through the family history, and they found out that they do, in fact, have a relative who fell in love with a warlock and was disowned by her family. Her family sent her to live with the Iron Sisters, basically, and she, like, allegedly died of sadness. And you want to guess what her name was? Annabelle Blackthorn. Annabelle Lee. Edgar Allan Poe, Blackthorn. Okay. And what's extra weird is that those plants that were growing at the cave, and Mark was like, these are non-native poisonous plants. What an odd thing to notice. Yeah, those plants are native to the part of England where Annabelle is from. They're a particular kind of belladonna that only grows in Cornwall, kind of on the cliffs. And that is where she lived with the Blackthorn family 200 years ago. Now, this is something that doesn't really make sense to me, but basically Diego lets us know that those poison arrows that he bought those from Johnny Rook. I feel like an official Shadowhunter investigator would not be buying his weapons from a shady criminal, but like, it is what it is. Okay, so Emma is pissed. She's like, I think he tried to sabotage us. He probably knows more than he's letting on. So Emma starts making some phone calls. She gets Johnny Rook on the phone and she demands to know why he betrayed her. Why are you selling poison arrows to fellow Shadowhunters? And like, why are you not telling me who the Guardian is? He's just like, listen, I met them once. They came to the booth. They're always covered. Nobody knows who they are. Like, he's covered head to toe in a mask and a cape, etc. Blah, blah, blah. And something about the way that he describes this person, Emma knows who it is. Like, it all clicks into place for her. We aren't really sure how, but it does. And Emma knows that the Guardian they're looking for is Malcolm Fade. Who did Annabelle Blackthorn fall in love with and try to run away with? A warlock 200 years ago. And remember how Malcolm is supposed to be helping with the investigation? Do you see him anywhere? Why has Livy been able to translate more than a warlock with a specialty in dead languages? That's kind of weird. And Magnus has mentioned this like once before. He kind of showed up in the very beginning of this book. He was like visiting Malcolm for like coffee or something. And he had mentioned to Julian that like, go easy on Malcolm. He's had a rough time of it. A lot of stuff happened to him back when he lived in England. And where did he live in England? Cornwall. So it's the pieces all fall together very quickly. Malcolm Fade is trying to bring Annabelle Blackthorn back from the dead. And the family does not like this conclusion. They're very much like, no, Malcolm's a friend. This must be a misunderstanding. But Tina is like, listen, I'm a third-party observer here. I don't really know Malcolm that well. Like, they've known Malcolm their entire lives, right? Christina's like, listen, I have no dog in this fight. Sounds like he's the one. Then the door of the library busts open. They're like having a meeting in the library. Drew runs in. She had been down with Tavi at the beach just to kind of like calm Tavi down from everything that had just happened today. But Drew runs into the library and is like, hey, what's up? You called me? You need me? And the gang is like, what? Drew is like, he told me that you guys needed to talk to me. What's up? And Julian is like, Drew, where's Tavi? And Drew is like, it's okay. I ran ahead, but they're gonna walk up together in a second. And Julian is like, Who was on the beach with you? Malcolm, Drew said. I left Tavi with Malcolm. Think back to that poem that we read about Blackthorn blood. Julian whispers under his breath, the last sacrifice. Blackthorn blood to bring back a Blackthorn. And then the room explodes. Basically, oh my God, this poor family. Because of the explosion, all of the phone, computer, whatever lines are down. They are scrambling to try and figure out where Tavi is. They're going to start running when Mark looks up and sees a figure on the roof. And of all people, it's Kieran. Kieran is like, guys, I know that it's Malcolm Fade and I want to help. And Ty is like, oh, aren't you the guy who tried to whip my brothers and my Emma? Why is he still alive? He is still alive because he has vital information for us. Lucky for him. Basically, Kieran is like, I know it was Malcolm, and I know because Irla has been helping him. They have been in cahoots this whole time. They have been working together since the attack on the Institute 5 years ago. And Kieran was basically suspicious of Irla and started to pay attention. It was Malcolm that killed Emma's parents. Emma is so confused by this. Like, they're friends, remember? Like, they've known each other for so long. But Kieran is like, from what I gather, they were part of an experiment. He wanted to see if he could raise the dead, and, well, he couldn't. So that lights a fire under Emma's ass. We're gonna go get him. They start getting ready to roll when Mark shocks everyone in the library by asking Julian to draw some runes on him so that he can fully take down this Malcolm Fade motherfucker. Okay? Because remember, he hasn't allowed anyone to touch him with a stele. He's been doing like quote unquote shadowhunter things, but hasn't really committed. He's locked in, baby. Okay? He said, I'm doing it for Tavi, and I'm doing it because I'm a shadowhunter. So they are all heavily armed and they are heading to the cave. Mark and Kieran are on the fairy steed, aka flying motorcycle, and everybody else is in the Toyota, okay? They head to the cave and Emma tells herself, no matter what happens, at the end of the day, she was going to get her revenge. Revenge time. They get to the cavern. They go in. It's different than it usually is. There's a lot of footprints. It seems like a lot of people have passed in and out of the cavern, which is weird. The portholes are gone. There's some more writing on the walls. And weirdest of all is the giant stone table in the middle of the room where Tavi is laying there as if he's sleeping. He's barefoot and his wrists and his legs are chained to the table, and there is this like jagged blade next to him. Livy is ready to fight. The second she sees her little brother, she like jumps, but Mark grabs her and pulls her back. He's like, no, there's like a protection circle around the table. We gotta hide. Someone's coming. So they like scurry into the shadows when this figure approaches the table. And Livy is like still fighting Mark. So finally she breaks free and she is just like, you touch my brother and you die. And the figure is like, Livy? And Livy is like, Diana? Julian immediately has violent flashbacks to Clare and Jace's story, in which, remember, they were betrayed by their tutor. Their tutor was the one who was doing all the shady shit. So Julian is like, oh my fucking God, history repeats itself. Diana has betrayed us. But before he can yell at her, Diana is like, shh, and pushes them back into the shadows because she can hear Malcolm approaching. Diana is like, so it is you. Malcolm seems only a little bit surprised to see her, and he's like, yeah, you figured it out. Step away from the boy. And Diana is like, Malcolm, this kid is essentially my son. I love him as if he's my own child. I'm not gonna let you do this. And Malcolm brings up something interesting that was I kind of glossed over it, to be honest. Basically, why is it that Diana is not the head of the Institute? She is aware that Arthur is dealing with shit, and she knows that Julian is running the place. So Malcolm is like, if you really loved these kids, why haven't you stepped up and become head of the Institute to like relieve Julian of this crazy responsibility that he's not equipped to handle, right? And Julian also mentioned this, like there is a very specific reason why Diana hasn't applied to be head of the Institute. We don't know what that is, but it's enough that like both Julian and Malcolm are like dangling it over her head, being like, get off of your high horse. How dare you? And as he's talking to Diana, he gets this like evil smile on his face. And that's when Emma, who is hiding in the shadows, is like, oh, he's gone. Like Malcolm is actually insane. Diana keeps talking to him and they're like walking in a circle, you know, until she manages to turn around and mouth run at the Blackthorns. But of course they fucking don't. Instead, Julian and Mark go deeper into the tunnel and all the kids just hoist up their weapons. Malcolm is like, Katerina told you, didn't she? That's how you found out. We're going to be introduced to Katerina in later books, but basically she's another warlock. We've met her briefly. She's basically a nurse. She has devoted her life to healing. She's close with Diana, and Diana basically came to her with a hunch because remember, Diana has been investigating this as well. Diana had weird feelings about Malcolm and basically approached Katerina, and Katerina didn't outright say what Malcolm was up to because maybe she didn't know, but she said enough that Diana put all the pieces together and rushed to this cave to help her kids, right? That's when Diana tries to throw a knife at Malcolm and he just paralyzes her with a spell. Then there's a flash of light and all of a sudden the cave is full of followers and they look drugged out. They look like zombies. And that flash of light also illuminated the rest of the cave. So Emma looks up and sees that there's a candelabra hanging, and the candelabra is made out of hands. So every death that we've had, remember, has had a hand cut off, and looks like we found him. Why does he have a pile of dead people hands? Because when he murdered Emma's parents, he realized that he got the spell wrong because the spell that he had read out of the spell book required something called like les mains de something, right? Like something in French basically called murderer's hands. And he thought that was an herb. So he found this herb called murderer's hands. Incorrect. This was a literal thing. He needed 13 hands of a murderer. So that's why with Sterling, nobody saw how he killed that girl. So just as a precaution, they cut off both of his hands, but like the girl in the pool, etc. The sacrifice, they needed them to kill someone so that they could get the murderer's hands. Does that make sense? Okay, anyway. So Diana is like, okay, knife didn't work. Let's try some empathy. And she's trying to get through to Malcolm like, you know the Blackthorns, you know Tavi. He is so far removed from Annabelle. None of these people know the Blackthorns that hurt Annabelle. You're just causing a whole nother riff of pain. And Malcolm says, nobody's innocent. And I'm getting my girl back. He's got a one-track mind. And that's when Emma is like, fuck this. And they all run at Malcolm. Ty, Livy, Emma, Christina, Diego, charge. Malcolm runs into another side of the cave. They end up having to fight the followers, but it's basically like fighting a bunch of zombies. So they're just kind of like cutting down these corpses. That's when Mark and Julian appear on the back of Kieran's fairy steed, who is now a horse, not a motorcycle. His name is Windspear. So they use Windspear. They just like go clip, clop, clip, clop, clip, clop through the cave, grab Tavi and try to escape. Okay, it's a mess. The horse is like kicking everybody. Horses aren't meant to be in small caves. Maybe not the best idea. Maybe not the best. And if you thought Drew was going to miss the action, you are absolutely incorrect because she shows up with a bunch of blades in her hand, also starting to fight the zombies when Malcolm comes out of nowhere and grabs her because while Julian managed to get Tavi and they like ran out of the cave, Drew is the next best thing. So Malcolm is like, great, another Blackthorn. We got plenty. Drew, you're next. Emma puts her thinking cap on and she's like, okay, we can try and stop Malcolm, sure. But what if we just tried to stop the spell? So she grabs that fucking candelabra full of dead people hands and she's just like, hey, Malcolm, this is lovely. It'd be a shame if something happened to it. She takes the candelabra and just takes off running. I think she thought she was heading out of the cave, but with everything getting turned around, she took a wrong turn and Malcolm follows her. He says, looks like you made a mistake, like so many others you've made in this life. He gives a multi-page speech that I'm not gonna give you. He's basically obsessed with revenge. He got hurt in the past, so he needs to continue hurting because that always fixes things, right? And he's obsessed with getting revenge on the Blackthorn family. And so at some point, Emma just gets tired of his monologue. So she tries to stab him. And she's using the Cortana, right? Like this legendary sword. It's as if she's stabbing a boulder. The energy that comes out of Malcolm throws her across the room and he grabs the candelabra and he's like, thanks. And as he's about to walk away with his winnings, he's like, by the way, Emma, really sorry to hear about your whole Parabatai issue. Basically, he's the one who saw them on the beach after they had sex. Those like footprints of like somebody saw us. It was Malcolm. And he's like, it'd be a real shame if somebody told the clave about you guys, right? But then he says, there's a reason you can't fall in love with your Parabatai, Emma. And when you find out what it is, you will feel the cruelty of the shadowhunters, just as I have. But then he's like, but you know what? I'm not going to make you suffer through that. I'm gonna kill you right now. You're never gonna figure it out. So you have no idea what your death will spare your beloved Julian of. And he raises his hand with a violet fire beginning to crackle between his fingers. He tries to throw this like purple fire at Emma, but she blocks it. And the thing that blocks it is a rune that Julian drew. That's weird. That shouldn't have happened. Okay, funny. 2 times in this story, runes drawn by the Parbatais have done impossible things. What could that mean? And then Emma is filled with this immense rage. You know how people are like, moms can lift cars off of their kids or like pry their kid out of an alligator's mouth? Emma's about to fight an alligator. She's pissed. She grabs her sword and drives it straight into Malcolm's gut. And she's not done. It goes clear through him and she pushes him against the glass of one of the portal doors because now they've found the portal doors, okay, with the water behind it, right? She's pushing him into the glass wall. She can hear the cracking of glass and the cracking of his ribs. Malcolm is like, if you kill me, you'll never know about the Parbatai curse. And Emma is like, respectfully, Malcolm, I could not give a shit. And she opens the lever door. A whirlwind of water lifted Malcolm off his feet, carrying him into the ocean. She slumps onto the wall and Julian comes rushing in. Apparently when Malcolm followed her down the tunnel, he sealed it off with magic. So Julian has like been banging on this magical barrier, freaking the fuck out, right? All of a sudden he's hugging her, he's kissing her head, he's kissing her lips, and she's like, whoa, 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 whoa. We're in public, buddy. You've got to let me go. Julian, you've got to let me go. We're back at the Institute. Kieran is hanging out with the gang. He feels like he believes that he has like redeemed himself and earned a spot on the team. And Julian is like, yeah, I'll think about that every time I look at the scars on Emma's back. Asshole, get the fuck out of here, okay? But the Institute is crowded. They walk in and they see Magnus and Clary. Basically, Magnus felt a huge boom of magic. So he was like, yeah, that sounds like something I need to come check on. He alerted Clary and Jace. Of course, Jace is here. Emma's really excited about this. Julian is not. Julian has never really understood the hype of Jace. So Jace like appears at the top of the staircase and does like this slow, dramatic walk down. And Julian is just looking at him like, Jace and Clary are dressed up real nice because they just portaled here directly from Isabel and Simon's engagement party because they're getting married, and that's like the best part of this damn book. Jace is a little pissed off that they got called out early because apparently he was really looking forward to giving a toast at the engagement ceremony because it was going to be glorious. Simon would never be able to show his face in public again. And everyone's just like so happy to see each other except for Julian, right? When the happy moment is interrupted by Robert Lightwood. He's now the Inquisitor, and he also felt the big boom in magic, so he came to check. And he immediately like scans the room and he's like, oh, Mark, that's funny. I thought you were with the fairies. We aren't supposed to work with the fairies. So anyone want to explain what's going on here? And then, as if the room isn't crowded enough, Arthur appears because he's been hanging out splitting a bottle of wine with his buddy Nightshade. So him and Nightshade and all of Nightshade's dogs come into the foyer. Julian is like, listen, my siblings were almost killed tonight. I think they're a little tired. Can they go to bed? So the 4 kids are excused. They go upstairs and Julian is like, I'll explain everything. And true to his word, he does. And the only thing that Robert Lightwood really gets out of this is like that they broke the Cold Peace Treaty. And so he's like, well, somebody's got to pay. Like, you really weren't supposed to do that. So weirdly enough, he's like, Arthur, what do you think? What kind of punishment should we give to these people for breaking the treaty? And Arthur is like, you don't think the punishment was having their family killed and ripped apart by the shadowhunters? And Robert Lightwood is like, well, we all lost people in that war, right? A lot of people were killed, including Robert Lightwood's son. But Arthur is like, yeah, but the shadowhunters exiled their siblings. They lost Mark and Helen because of the clave. He says, we expect betrayal from our enemies, not from those who are supposed to care for us. And Magnus is like, yeah, what he said. Like, Magnus backs him up. So Robert is like, well, I gotta punish somebody, all right? We've got a dead high warlock. We've got all these shenanigans. What am I supposed to do? And Julian Blackthorn, this little fucking liar, already has a plan. Okay? He, while they were in the car, ordered a shit ton of vampire pizzas that just got delivered to the home. And he turns to his Uncle Arthur and he's like, do you want to tell him what you've been working on? Or should I? And Uncle Arthur's kind of like, Julian's like, okay, I'll do it. Basically, my uncle's friend here, Nightshade, has been running a vampire pizzeria where they're putting dark magic, these addictive substances, into the sauce. And Emma is like, I fucking knew there was something in the sauce. This has been an ongoing joke throughout the entire book that whenever the vampire pizza is mentioned, there's a joke about like, what's in the sauce? You think the joke is like blood because vampires. Wrong. Dark magic. The pizza's literally addictive. So Magnus opens one of the boxes, sniffs a slice, and he's like, ooh, yeah, that's dark. That's dark magic right there. So Nightshade is the one who's gonna get in trouble. Granted, he's only gonna get like a slap on the wrist, but it ticks the box that Robert Lightwood gets to punish somebody. Nightshade feels very betrayed, and to be honest, like Julian does feel bad, but he's sort of like, it's you or me. He says, I gotta do what I gotta do. Depriving the world of vampire pizza, unfortunately, but my family is safe. Then we get a couple of scenes with Mark. First, Mark is on the roof doing his little like musing thing when Jace comes up and has a little chat with him. And he's basically like, listen, Mark, I just want you to know that the New York Institute is always on your side. If you ever need us, we are here. And he's like, and tell Julian that too. Like, running an institute is really hard. If you need anything, like, please call us. And then Mark sees a figure standing out by the beach, which of course is Kieran. So we got to go have a chat with him. And basically Kieran is like, I see you've chosen to stay. And Mark is like, yes, Kieran, I've chosen to stay with my family that loves me and doesn't try to punish me for like talking to girls, right? Like you stepped way out of line. But he was like, you did come when we needed you most, and we likely wouldn't have been able to do this without you. So I can owe you a favor. He's basically like, if you need me once, I will come when you call, but only once. And Kieran is like, yeah, I figured that was your answer. But you know, if you don't got hope, what do we have? So he and Windespear fly off into the distance with that little promise Mark made him. Mark is being real willy-nilly with these promises of like, if you ever need me, call me. I'm worried for him in this series. Okay. Next, we get a scene with Emma and Julian. They are in Emma's closet taking down her wall of crazy. And she's sort of like, I don't know what I'm gonna do now that we've solved this, right? Like this was my whole life for so long. And she also is like, by the way, Julian, you're kind of scary how good you lie. Julian somehow foresaw this happening and drugged Uncle Arthur before they even left for the cave, right? So that's why he was so coherent. And Emma is like, you lie really, really well. And you came up with this thing that like, who could have seen that coming? But the one thing Julian can't plan around is his own damn heart. And he's sort of like, Emma, call me crazy. What if we ran away? What if we just got out of here? And Emma is like, there's nowhere we can run. She says, I don't think leaving all of your family that you love so much is really going to work out. And speak of the devil, Tavi makes some kind of sound. He like wakes up from a nightmare. So they run down the hallway to get him. They continue this conversation while he's like rocking Tabby back to sleep. So they're whispering. And Emma's like, we couldn't leave them, Julian. You couldn't stand it. And I don't want you to do something you'll spend the rest of your life regretting. And Julian looks down at his Parvati rune and he's like, well, I've already done something like that. But that's a problem that we can solve tomorrow. He's waited this long after all. He could wait another day. Now to our final chapter. Give me a moment to breathe. Hold on. Whew. Where could this possibly go? How could this possibly get more chaotic? Cassie, what could you do in one chapter and one epilogue? I'm ready. Our final chapter, we're back with the boy who started it all, Kit. Remember him from the prologue? He's sitting at home with his dad and they're just having a normal day when all of a sudden the ground shakes and it doesn't feel like one of those typical California earthquakes. And Johnny's like, something must have happened to the Guardian because all of the wards around his house are gone. So he has been working with the Guardian, right? But he didn't know, to be fair to Johnny, he didn't know it was Malcolm. Okay, he just knew him as the Guardian and he like had helped him get some information in exchange for these wards. Something feels very, very wrong to Kit, and his dad is like, quick, Kit, like get back in the basement, get back downstairs. And Kit notices his dad's phone is on the charger by the basement door. So he grabs it and he remembers back to when Emma said, if you ever need anything, you know where my phone number is stored. Kit barely has time to send an emergency text message to Emma when all of the doors in the house open and demons come flooding in. Kit turns to his dad and sees 2 demons rip Johnny Rook in half. While Kit is experiencing probably the most traumatic event of his life, Julian and Emma are just getting kissy in bed. Okay, apparently Julian woke her up by sticking his tongue in her ear, and they just continued that way for a while until they are interrupted by Drew, who is knocking on the door being like, Julian, can you make me a sandwich? And Emma also hasn't told Julian what Malcolm said about the curse of the Parabatai, but she's decided, like, I gotta tell him today, right? If we're gonna keep doing this, he needs to know. So she's kind of about to tell him when her phone blows up and she hears about Johnny Rook. Who else is getting kissy in this house? Good God, Christina and Diego. Basically, Tina stayed up with Diego all night because in the cave fight, he got some crazy shoulder wound. And as they're getting cozy, who walks in but Mark? Because in fairy, buildings like don't have doors, so Mark isn't used to like knocking, right? So he just strolls in. He wasn't sure what his feelings for Christina were, but quote, seeing her kiss Diego hurt more than he would have thought. Some of the pain was jealousy, some of it was realization that he'd been away from mortal people for so long. He no longer understood them, and he buried his head in his hands. Tina and Diego didn't see him. He like walks in, he's like, fuck, walks out. Okay, so ouch, Marky Mark. Kit is attempting to fight the demons with whatever weapon he has, which is nothing. I think he's fighting them off with like a foldable chair. When Emma, how in the world did she get to their house in Los Angeles traffic that quickly? Lord only knows. But Emma shows up, sword ablazing, fighting off the demons, okay? There's another woman that Kit doesn't recognize, and Emma's like, listen, I'm gonna take care of the demons. Tessa, you take care of Kit. Tessa? Ladies and gentlemen, if you have not read Infernal Devices yet, you don't know who this woman is. I'm not gonna tell you. You can think of her as Emma's aunt, okay? Tessa Gray. Yeah. And she's not a shadow hunter, but she does have powers of her own, okay? But she says, Kit, I know who you are, and you gotta come with me. Kit kind of doesn't believe her, so she is like, Christopher Herondale, trust me. Herondale. It's always the goddamn Herondales. Yes, you heard that correctly. Christopher Herondale, not Christopher Rook. That's weird. She says, you've got to trust me. I know your real name. Christopher Jonathan Herondale. Your father was Jonathan, aka Johnny. And Tessa is like, listen, we just gotta get out into the car. That's where Clare and Jace are. You know him, Jace Herondale. And Kit is like, oh, I know Jace Herondale. My dad fucking hates that guy. Apparently, he's the worst shadow hunter. And remember, he has been trained by his father to hate and fear shadow hunters. So he's really not appreciating Tessa continuously calling him one. He's like, no, that's not Herondale. What are you talking about? My name is Kit Rook. So basically, Kit's grandparents were shadow hunters, but they broke some kind of horrible rule and they were put to death. But Katerina, the warlock, stole the baby and brought him to safety to be raised in America. And that baby was Johnny Rook. So Kit is a shadow hunter, but kind of a generation removed. And they found him because Tessa has been looking into the history of the Herondales, which I think is a story for another time. But she found him and she was like, wow, in our own backyard. We bring Kit back to the Institute and Kit immediately locks himself in a room. So we're gonna deal with that later. And because Tessa is around, obviously we know that Uncle Jem is around. Remember Brother Zachariah? Now he is Jem Carstairs, aka the only living relative of Emma, who was basically like, hey, I got shit to do. Can you take care of my cat? Which, by the way, I just want you to know, throughout the entire book, Church, the cat, is just like around at all times. Okay? Emma pulls him aside because he used to be a silent brother, so he knows a lot of shit. So in a roundabout way, she asks him about the Parabatai curse. She's like, if, hypothetically speaking, if someone were to fall in love with their Parabatai, what could go wrong? And he seems very reluctant to tell her, to be honest, but he eventually breaks, and here is what happens. Are you ready? The Parabatai ritual was created so that shadow hunters could be stronger together. They share each other's strength, runes that are drawn by your Parabatai always work better, blah, 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 blah. If the bond gets too close, if it tips to romantic love, it could warp and change that power. Rather than losing their powers would grow. The runes they would create would be unlike any other. They would be able to wield magic as warlocks do, but eventually that power would make them mad until they became monsters. They would destroy their families, anyone else they loved. Death would surround them until eventually They die themselves. And Emma's like, cool. Why didn't anyone tell us that? She was like, we know the benefits, but we don't know the consequences. Jem is basically like, even if you knew, would that stop love? Ignorance is truly bliss. And that is why in the next scene, Emma lays down the law to Julian. She's like, listen, no kissing, no being in love, no dating. She says, I don't want to have this kind of relationship. I don't want to be sneaking around. Why don't we wait until Tavi gets old enough? And then once the house is empty, maybe we can think about it. But like, I deserve to have you fully or not at all. So I don't want to even do this. She doesn't tell Julian about the curse. She just tells him that she doesn't want to do this anymore. Girl, Julian says, I thought I was the liar of the relationship. I can tell that you're lying, Emma, and you lie badly. You're just trying to push me away to protect me. Stop. We love each other. But she just walks away. And where does she walk? Where does Emma walk? Straight the fuck into Mark Blackthorn's bedroom. She's like, Marky Mark, hey, remember that favor you owed me? I've come to collect. This is so Cassandra Clare coded. This is sick and diabolical and only her brain. Only her brain. All right. Basically, we know from his own lips that Julian is still kind of insecure about Emma's relationship with Mark because she had a passing crush on him when she was 12, right? But remember, Julian said that just the idea of Emma and Mark together makes him sick, and he doesn't think he would ever be able to come back from that. If he were to lose Emma to anyone, he would die. But if he were to lose Emma to Mark, Julian would implode. Okay? Emma knows this. And she also knows that she needs Julian to give up on her, right? She doesn't want everybody to die. She doesn't want to become a monster. So what's the favor? I want you, if Julian asks, no, whether he asks or not, I need you to pretend with me that we're dating, that we're falling in love. This is crazy. And Mark, bless his heart, is like, couldn't you ask Cameron to do this? Like, I know that I'm the closest dude in your age group in this house, but like, come on, man. And Emma is like, no, it's got to be you. It could save Julian's life. I can't tell you any more than that. I need you to do this. And Mark is like, honestly, Emma, anyone would be honored to be your boyfriend. You're smart, you're beautiful, you're brave. I just have one last question. And he turns to close the door to his bedroom. He turns back to her and he's like, why lie? Why fake date? When we could just do it for real. Let me just give you the epilogue. In the epilogue, we are with Annabelle in her coffin where she was buried 200 years ago and her eyes open. Okay, so remember, we're thinking, why is Mark doing this? Mark just turned away his first love, sent him back to Fairy, basically being like, fuck you. The girl that he has a crush on, moments ago, he just saw her kissing her first love. So Mark is feeling very down about this. So when Emma comes to be like, let's fake date to save your brother's life, Mark is sort of like, why fucking fake it? I'm single, you're single, and the chaos that is about to ensue. We have 1,400 pages left of this series. I'll see you in the next one.